Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Can we have roll call, please?
Director Chan,
Present.
Director Gomez,
Here.
Director Katz, Director Lewis,
Here.
Director Odie,
I'm here.
Director Smith,
Present.
President Young.
I am here. All right, we are going to move on to public comment. Are there any commenters online?
No online public comment at this time.
Okay, then we will move to in-person public comment, which we have an abundant number of, I believe 10 cards. Eric, is your card at the end because you'd like to speak last? No, I'll go first. Okay, then I will call you first. Eric Larson
You need to change.
first, and then I have Patrick Inthavise. Did I say it right? Great. And then Eddie Chung, and I'll sort of advance. Okay, you have 3 minutes. Please don't share any personal items like, you know, your address or anything like that. And the secretary will track your time. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Young. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak first and stack. My name is Eric Larson. I'm President AFSCME Local 444. Good morning, President Young. Good morning, General Manager Chan. I'm here before you with just 2 weeks left in our current contract. We've been bargaining for over 6 months for our successor contract. We came into negotiations quite early with a very serious effort to conclude bargaining at our contract expiration date rather than running over. But we are insulted, Director Chan, we are insulted by your wage proposal of just 6% over 3 years, with the first year less than inflation, the first year less than the Bay Area CPI, the first year less than the cost of living in the Bay Area. We are insulted also by your HIB proposal, Director Chan.
Please stop calling him Director Chan.
My bad. I apologize. General Manager. I
I'm in enough
apologize,
trouble,
Director
Eric. You're
Chan.
trying to give me more trouble.
Nonetheless, we are insulted by the General Manager's proposal that the HIB improvement seeks to put the entire cost of the increased benefit on the employee. We are also insulted by the lack of willingness to increase the PEPRA contributions with either a longevity bump or a meaningful 401k contribution increase. We're insulted by your negotiators telling us that the district needs certainty in its budget, but the wage proposal is a takeaway that's less than inflation. And we're supposed to take the risk of the economic uncertainty. Your employees, the workers at EBMUD, the working class here at EBMUD are supposed to take on the economic uncertainty that we're seeing with under tariffs and under the inflationary period that we're looking at ahead. We are your workers here at EBMUD, and EBMUD should take on the uncertainty, not your workers. But you've asked us to take on the uncertainty while the district plans to spend more on capital projects, increasing capital appropriations by 100%. You need to increase the authority of your negotiators by 100%, not your capital appropriations, to give us a real and meaningful cost of living adjustment and a real and meaningful health insurance benefit that can take care of us in retirement. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Eric. Next up, Patrick Inthavise, and then Eddie Chung, and then after that, Gilbert Laredo.
Good morning, Madam President, board members, General Manager Chan, General Counsel. So I want to speak in front of you, but I don't do that very often, so I'm going to look at my notes. I would like to bring to your attention the subject of standby unit pay. It's a subject that we feel is a great injustice. We feel that we're not being paid appropriately for that, and that we feel exploited, and it kind of thanks the morale of the crew that's kind of responding to this call. For the sake of time, I want to kind of bring up two documents, our MOU, section 9.2, but also procedure 214, which kind of governs how our pay is calculated and what we take home. But what is standby unit pay? I mean, why does EBMUD pay us for non-working hours? It's because when you are on call, for that week of call, we have to be ready to go back to work. To keep on employment, you have to respond to the call within 45 minutes and report to the yard. The MOU said that we should be paid 25% of our hourly rates for our non-working hours. And because we have to be ready to go back to work as a moment notice, the middle of the nights, or during the weekends, during the holiday, it means a lot of broken promises. We might be missing birthdays, kids' games, holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas morning. And it's tanking the morale because of the crew, because we feel that when we talk to other water company like San Francisco Water, who are paid 20% of their hourly rates, they take home like 3 times more than we take home. To be concrete with numbers, I would say for an employee working at being paid only $50 an hour, they take home during the week call about $500. I'm sorry, and then as opposed to other water company, they take 3 times more. For instance, San Francisco Water, we're talking about around $1,800 for that week of call, and Contract Costa Water is closer to $1,000. So I am a water distribution crew foreman. I actually work in Central Yard. I've been with the district for 9 years. I'm also a ratepayer. I love what I do. I'm very proud of EBMUD and what we stand for. So kind of speaking from the heart today, because I feel that we should correct this. As you know, calls is ongoing. It doesn't stop during the negotiations, and so the crews are still out there, taking care of our P5, our main breaks, to bring people back in water, and kind of wanted to have that look at least bring that to your attentions. Okay, thank you.
You did well. Thank you. Okay, next up I have Eddie Chung, then Gilbert, and then John Halseth.
Good morning, Madam President Young, members of the board, General Manager Chan. My name is Eddie Chung. I am a negotiator for Local 444. We have been in negotiations with management since October of last year. We passed our first proposal in October. We are now in the month of April, 8 months since the start of negotiations and 7 months since the initial proposals. Our contract will end on the 26th of this month. Management has indicated they wanted to conclude before that date. Local 444 would also like to do that. But before that, we have some proposals on the table that we feel we must resolve before we can sign. Among these are standby, job site reporting, and fatigue. These issues have been brought to the attention of management during the past few years with grievances and meet and confirm meetings. Nothing has been done. So we have taken these issues into the negotiation process. The language in the contract has been ambiguous at best, and in the case of fatigue, Local 444 and management has gone to arbitration, and the arbitrator ruled that the language in the MOU should be redone to make it more clear. Wages and health insurance are very important to our members, but these other issues also must be addressed. We do not want to keep grieving these issues during the next years because these are problems with the interpretations of the language. Please direct the management team to come to the table with good faith efforts to negotiate the proposals and make the MOU work for both the district and the union. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. I just have one question, and it's just I think I need to get my hearing adjusted, but You had standby, fatigue, and what was the third?
Job site reporting. Job site
Job site
reporting.
reporting, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up. Gilbert Laredo, followed by John Halseth, followed by Allison Breed. Is that right?
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board, General Manager Clifford Chan, and General Counsel. I'd like to speak to you about job site reporting today. I know I put negotiations, it's just one of the things I want to talk about. Job site reporting is definitely, we're being exploited, we're being taken advantage of. Many of our people that are receiving job site reporting are commuting further and further out. Price of gas consistently goes up and down, but usually just stays up. As we continue to expand PCE and improve our infrastructure, we hire more people, which is great, but many of these people are commuting from further and further out, from the Central Valley, from the Sacramento area. At the current rate, what they're getting is just under $24 a day. That's really not sufficient for the wear and tear on their vehicles. If they're fortunate and they work out on the east side of the hills, it's a little bit shorter commute, but that's not always the case. Many people that are commuting from further out also have to report to San Leandro or Oakland. It's wear and tear on their vehicle and time of the day that takes away from them. It hasn't kept up with the cost of living in the last 20 years. It's always been behind, and we've gone back and forth with it. Currently, it's just, like I said, it's just under $24. I really hope that we're able to negotiate something better for our members that are out there commuting and performing these duties out on job sites. And that way they can make it a little bit easier, so it's a little bit, keeps their morale up, so there's something at the end of the tunnel, because it's beating up their vehicles, like we said, cost of living, tires, it all takes a toll. And I'm just hoping we can negotiate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, John Halseth, then Allison, and then Jeremy Williams.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Clifford Chan, Derek McDonald. My name is John Halseth. I'm a water distribution plumber 3 with more than 18 years of experience, and I'm the member relations secretary for Local 444. Local 444 currently has a fatigue proposal on the table in contract negotiations. We've had some decent back and forth with the district's negotiating team, but one aspect of the current fatigue language in our MOU that the district's negotiating team has refused to budge on is the 4-hour morning call-out. Currently, employees who are called to work 4 hours or less before the start of their normal shift are not eligible to receive fatigue time off. That means that an employee whose shift normally begins at 7 a.m., who's called to work at 3 a.m., is not eligible to receive that fatigue time and must stay at work and finish the rest of their shift. Local 444 has proposed to change the morning call-out minimum time from 4 hours to 2 hours. Fatigue time is about safety. District employees who take standby work with and around heavy equipment and machinery that is dangerous and oftentimes in public roadways. Most of Local 444's members start between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. And there's no sane argument that could be made that an employee who is woken up at 2 or 3 in the morning by a phone call to come to work is going to be well enough rested and not be unreasonably fatigued after working 12 or 13 hours. That's the 4 hours of overtime before the start of their shift, plus the 8 or 9 hours that their normal shift covers. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration website states that fatigue has costly effects on the safety, health, and quality of the life of the American public, and that these include impaired cognition and performance, motor vehicle crashes, workplace accidents, and health consequences. Not only are tired employees subject to all of these dangers, but their coworkers and the public around them are too. Drowsy driving is often compared to drunk driving in terms of danger. www.sleepfoundation.org quotes the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information as saying, though not identical, drowsy driving and drunk driving bear some similarities and are considered equally dangerous. The district does not and absolutely should not condone its employees being intoxicated at work, but then why is the district so hell-bent on making its employees work while drowsy? Please do right by your employees, your customers, and the general public at large. Do not force your employees into a situation where they present a danger to themselves, their coworkers, and the public. Do the right thing, change the 4-hour window to a more reasonable 2-hour window, and let your workers go home and get some sleep so that they can be safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, I have Allison Breed, then Jeremy Williams, then Ryan Fierner. Been doing so well up till now. Fierner. Okay, thank you. Allison, go ahead.
Good morning, board members, General Manager Clifford Chan, and General Counsel Derek. My name is Allison Breedy, employee 17108. I am a water treatment plant supervisor at Sobrante Water Treatment Plant. I am here today on behalf of water treatment plant supervisors to provide you with information on our equity adjustment presentations and subsequent negotiations and ask for your support on this matter. During the negotiations of 2020, the treatment plant supervisors presented an equity adjustment highlighting how the job duties have changed and evolved and increased over the years since the initial classification audit in 2009. And this is also including recruitment and retention issues. A job classification study was conducted by Koff Associates, published in January of 2023, which identified added duties that current plant supervisors perform, and which was also reviewed by superintendents and managers who provided written comments and supported those findings. The effort to edit the outdated job classification resulted in several drafts and highlighted the new duties and expanded the language of the current responsibilities. However, while that draft was being written, the equity adjustment was denied in December of 2023. After the equity adjustment was denied, the draft job description was finalized and published in February of 2024. The new job description, which reflected all the new duties that we're responsible for, was adopted and published, and yet the supervisors were provided no additional compensation at that time. The report highlights the expansion of duties related to capital improvement projects, including new engineered design drawings and specification reviews at the 10%, 50%, and 90% phase, providing written recommendations based on operations and feasibility. The work continues to increase with more capital improvement projects totaling $600 million currently at 3 plants, with new CIP slated for Walnut Creek and Lafayette totaling another $60 million. The challenge with these major construction projects is keeping the plant in service to meet consumer demands while construction is ongoing. Our communities depend on us to meet demand while not sacrificing water quality. The board likes to highlight our water quality to the public and provides the annual water quality report. Not once did our treatment plants not meet public demand or meet regulatory requirements. Treatment supervisors are the last line of defense for every drop leaving the plant entering the distribution system. The district has recognized the expanded duties that we perform and memorialized them in our updated job description. We deserve to be compensated for those duties as they now continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jeremy Williams, then Ryan Fierner, and Brett Bergmark.
Good morning, board members, President Young, General Manager Chan. My name is Jeremy Williams, and I work as a general pipe supervisor in the pipeline division. We have come to speak to the board today because of an ongoing issue with human resources. We are asking the board to help us address the lack of timeliness and accountability on the part of district HR. I'm going to specifically address the lack of timeliness. On April 26th of 2022, I sent a formal request to the assigned employee in employee relations for a compensation study for our classification as part of the EAP process. I was instructed to do so by our union, Local 21, who had been informed of this protocol by the district. I resubmitted this request on May 10th of 2022 because we had not received a response. On June 23rd of 2022, our union addressed the delay with the district and were assured that a senior HR analyst in classification and recruitment would be expediting the submitted request with an external consultant. On October 3rd of 2023, we received the consultant's report. It consisted of a classification study and did not contain any compensation data. When our union asked when we could expect the compensation component, the district informed them they were unaware our classification wanted compensation during the equity analysis. In November of 2023, district HR produced a base salary survey for the GPS classification. We immediately alerted our union to several poor matches and they were provided this feedback to the district. After several more attempts to follow up on these issues, an updated base salary survey was produced in August of 2024. The updated version of this report had one classification removed and the salaries updated to current schedules. We were not able to engage in any discussion or conversation regarding the removal and inclusion of classifications. The base salary survey was used as a primary foundation for our EAP decision. We've continued to attempt to address the inaccurate classification matches on this report. We had a meeting with HR Management and General Manager Chan on November 27th of 2024 about the lack of timeliness and transparency in the process. Since that meeting, we have continued to request knowledge of the authorship and data validation of the base salary survey. We recently received a partial response to our RFI that was contradictory to previous information provided by the district. We have sent 2 emails in response and have not received a clarification or resolution. It is now April 2025, 3 years after we requested a compensation study, and it has still not yet been resolved. I personally spent significant time outside of working hours on our EAP, and these hours have been substantially increased by needing to address HR's lack of accountability and responsiveness. It's been an extremely frustrating experience that has eroded our trust in the process. This topic is going to be continued by our next speaker, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeremy, I have one question.
Yes,
When you say
absolutely.
matches, you mean other agencies, right? Which agencies were looked at in the study? Is that correct? Okay. Just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
Ryan, say your name.
Ferner, Ryan Ferner.
Berner.
Yep.
Okay, so the I is like silent. Okay. Go ahead.
Good morning, President Young, members of the board, General Manager Chan. My name is Ryan Ferner. I work as General Pipe Supervisor in Pipeline Construction Division. We wanted to make sure the board had an opportunity to hear the specific issues we've had raised with the base salary survey, as we do not feel we are criticizing close matches. GPSs are an exempt supervisory classification that supervise crews engaged in infrastructure renewal of our water distribution system. Our crews primarily consist of water distribution plumbers, heavy equipment operators, heavy transport operators, utility laborers, pipeline welders. The district has defined a classification as a sufficient match if the general nature and scope of the job are similar and there is at least a 70% match in duties and assignment. Of the original 7 matches, 3 were in facilities maintenance and managed crews that did not engage in distribution plumbing. Additionally, 2 of these classifications were not active or filled, and unsurprisingly were the lowest compensated by a significant margin. Another classification that we have identified as a poor match is also a non-exempt, unrepresented classification with no active bargaining agreement with their district. 4 out of the original 7 classifications did not even approach meeting the district's stated standard for inclusion. 1 classification was removed from the updated base salary survey, and this was the reason provided. HR staff agreed with feedback that the water agency maintenance supervisor classification was a less than desirable match, as the primary focus of the role is less on water distribution pipeline construction and repair and more on sewer and collection lines, as well as flood control channels and creeks. There are 2 remaining classifications that this also described, which led us to question whether a genuine review of our feedback has been done. We especially felt that an actual review of this classification would have led HR to realize, beyond it being assigned to a department that does not engage in any plumbing, it has never been filled or open for recruitment in the history of their district. We have been attempting to address these blatant errors in the base salary survey that the district has used to determine the labor market rate for our work since the initial survey was provided. We have recently been assigned a new employee in employee relations, and we are again waiting to hear back after they are done consulting with classification and recruitment. And Brett Bergmark will be following me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Brett Bergmark.
Good morning, President Young and members of the board. My name is Brett Bergmark. I'm a General Pipe Supervisor in the Pipeline Division. I am going to address the lack of accountability we have been experienced. In the meeting we had with management in November, Lori Warden was asked how the comparator agency classifications were selected and validated. Lori's response was that the compensation studies were based on data collected by external consulting resources, including the classifications themselves, and that she had not completed this work or personally validated the data. This was new information to us, and we initiated an RFI for these external consulting resources. Everything we had received indicated the work was done internally. We emailed Lori Warden on December 6th to ask for clarification on her statements with all meeting attendees copied. We sent a follow-up email on December 12th as we had not received a response. Another HR employee responded and provided a statement that from the district that the base salary surveys had been completed by district HR staff and that the greater than 70% match for comparator classifications had been validated. We have continued to request knowledge of the authorship of the base salary survey and the documentation of this data validation. On March 20th, we received a response from HR stating Lori Warden completed the compensation review and the documentation of the 70% match doesn't exist, as it is just a guideline/best practice. We found this response extremely frustrating as Lori Warden had explicitly stated she did not complete this work. We emailed Adam Smyer directly with all meeting attendees copied to highlight the issue of authorship and data validation. We received this additional response from HR. There is no documentation required that provides validation of the 70% match when making the determination if a classification is a match. Internal or external resources would determine the match based upon their knowledge, expertise, historical information, including past matches, training and classification information. In explaining that classification matches were contingent upon meeting this standard, the district did not intend to create an expectation that such documentation would be created. It took 4 months for HR to disclose the work wasn't done and doesn't exist. HR has already confirmed to us that there are no historic matches for our classification. We are being asked to accept this base salary survey is valid based on work done inside the mind of an unidentified employee of unknown classification and experience. On the job site, we wear safety vests with the core values printed on them: stewardship, integrity, respect, and teamwork. These values have not been present in HR's conduct. We are unsure how to move forward in the process when they appear unwilling or unable to communicate without further discrepancies.
Thank you. And I think our last speaker, Dwight George.
Okay. I'm setting my timer. Good morning, Board of Directors, President Young, General Manager Chan. My name is Dwight George. I'm a executive board member of Local 21, and I just want to recap some of the things that were just discussed by some of our members. The water treatment supervisors and general pipe supervisors have been through a lot since the last negotiations. Since that time, water treatment supervisors had their job description rewrote with no compensation. There was a lot of back and forth. There was an understanding that there would be a compensation. That never came to fruition. Here we are again, back to square one. General pipe supervisors have been through multiple years of back and forth, and you just heard them talk about the compensation studies that were super, super flawed, and they brought up many things about them. I'm gonna briefly touch on some of that stuff. In 2017, this in-depth document was prepared by Renee Sloan, and they did the comparator agencies, and they went all the way into local compensation for just the general median income for the families of Oakland, right? The price of housing, all that stuff. They did all this background, right? Then they identified a number of agencies, and they put them in spreadsheets like this, right? And that was used, and they came up with a list of classifications, that general classifications, major classifications at the district, and used them for future comp studies. Of that list is all 444, all 2019 predominantly, and a little 37. 0 local 21 represented classifications done by this study. I'm asking you guys why? Why leave out a large chunk of this organization, especially the chunk that is, you know, maybe hard to classify against? General pipe supervisors, they don't have a lot to match out there because there's not a lot of capital improvement programs of this size out here for us to compare ourselves with. So that's flaw number one. Why is there no local 21 people in this study? So that was done in 2017. Fast forward to 2021, now it looks more like this. There's a cover sheet on it. All that background data has been removed, and now it's just spreadsheets of those same classifications. So it's half the size, but it's got EBMUD's cover page on it. Then you go to 2024, now no cover page. Who did this? And who did the work since 2017 on these classifications? Some classifications were updated or removed, and I want to point something out to 444 here. When I looked at plumber threes, originally in 2017 were 11.9% over median, according to Renee Sloan. 2021, they adjusted it to 5% over, bringing it back more down to reality by removing the distribution maintenance worker 2, because that was so low. Then you fast forward to 2024, they downgraded a lead worker to utility worker. Now the plumber threes are 20% overpaid, according to this. Has there been an equity adjustment since then? I don't think so. So what is going on with the data? Who is doing this data? Who decided to change that position, right? Math can tell the story, but it can tell the story you want to pay. So here's the question, and I'm asking the board to look into that, please. And finally, just to summarize here.
Your time. Yeah, if you can.
Yep, just to summarize here.
You.
Grant some authority to Mr. Keith Fleming to give the water treatment supervisors the 5% they're asking for, and the general pipe supervisors the 10% they're asking for. We've been through a lot. This is a brand-new board. You guys have an opportunity here to make things right. This is the time. Make things right. Look into this. Ask the questions. Come up with a justification and answer why they are either overpaid or underpaid. But to this date, we cannot get the answer of who wrote that report, who made those changes, where did it come from? Thank you.
Thank you. Did we get any more cards? And is there anybody else online? Okay, I want to thank all of you for coming and sharing your concerns. And as Mr. Larson indicated at the top, we are interested in moving to a successful conclusion of negotiations as soon as possible, and appreciate hearing what's important to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn to conference room 8 for closed session item 1 and return here for our regular meeting at 1:15. Okay, welcome to the Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. We will receive a report from this morning's Planning Committee and the Ledge HR Committee prior to the consent calendar. Can we have roll call, please, Madam Secretary?
Director Chan,
Present.
Director Gomez,
Present.
Katz,
Present.
Director Lewis,
Here.
Director Odie,
Here.
Director Smith,
Present.
President Young.
I am here. Okay, time for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. There are no announcements from closed session. We will now move on to public comment. If there are members of the public online who wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comment on non-agenda items will be heard now. Comments on agenda items, I don't know which, you have, I never know which mic is mine. I guess it's this one. That's louder. Comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. Are there any public comments online?
No online public comment.
And I have cards for agenda item 12, but not for other non-agenda items. So we will move on. We will be taking some agenda items out of order. We will conduct the public hearing under agenda item 10 to receive a report on job vacancy rates of the district's unions as required by California Assembly Bill 2561, local employees' vacant positions after determination and discussion, item 13. For committee reports, the minutes of the March 25th, 2025 Finance and Administration Committee meeting are provided in your agenda materials. We will now receive an update from this morning's Planning and Ledge HR committees. For the Planning Committee, Director Chan.
Okay. Hi. Okay, this morning, yes, we met and we heard really fantastic news today. I mean, I think today was a good news day. So we heard about what was happening at the McCollum Fish Hatchery. That was one. And second, our agreement with Blue Forest about wildfire preservation, about our preservation of our very fragile watersheds was given. And it looks like, I mean, there's been a lot of progress. We've been able to get money to make sure that wildfire would be controlled. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and then from this morning's Ledge HR Committee, Director Gomez.
Yes, so I will be very brief because the full board will be hearing a presentation from Ms. Viatella this afternoon. But we, as a committee, agreed with staff's recommendations to support the various bills that were presented this morning.
Okay, we will now move on to the consent calendar, and we will be pulling items 1 through 7, that would be ridiculous. 1 and 7, are there any other requests to pull items from consent? Okay, then Director Chan, do you want to, I'm sorry, it's the same last name thing. General Manager Chan, if you want to share with us the comments on 1 and 7?
Yeah, thank you, President Young. Just very quickly, for item number 1, for the regular meeting minutes of March 25th, 2025, on page 2 of 10, the dates for the upcoming DERWA meetings are incorrect, and those will be corrected in the final minutes. And item 7, on the sewer system management plan, under section E82, there's a request to add some additional information on the various groups that we're collaborating with to understand and address the impacts of sea level rise. So that will be included in the plan when it gets finalized and submitted to the state.
Okay, great. So do I have a motion for, we can now do all the items. Those were just clarifications. Okay.
So moved.
Moved by Director Odie,
I'll second it with appreciation for staff for doing those.
seconded by Director Gomez. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstain? Okay. Consent calendar is adopted. We'll now move on to determination and discussion. And first,
Yes.
General Manager.
So this is for the appointment of for the manager of the Distribution, Maintenance, and Construction Division. I am very, very delighted to bring to you for your consideration the appointment of Mike Rangel as the next manager of Distribution, Maintenance, and Construction. Mike started his career at the district as a TC water distribution plumber in South area. He then entered the Pipeline Training Academy in January of 2002 and worked as a plumber in pipeline, also again in South area and North area. He promoted to water distribution crew foreman in July 2011 in East area, and that's when I first met Mike Rangel, and it was very memorable. I still haven't forgotten that meeting, and so happy to see you progress in your career. 9 years later, in May 2020, he moved to Central area as the Assistant Construction and Maintenance Superintendent. And since 2023, he has been the construction and maintenance superintendent over the paving section in the pipeline construction division. Mike has spent his career working on our pipelines and will be a very strong leader for the division, and I'm happy to bring this for your consideration.
Okay. Do I have a motion, a question?
I just have a question, and it's nothing to do with the qualifications, but it would seem to me that this is something that should be in the purview of the general manager without the board. Can you maybe give some background on why the board is weighing in on a hiring decision?
I can do that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, usually this, historically, items of this nature were always on consent. And historically, the director that preceded Director Chan always pulled the item in order to afford the board the opportunity to, comment on the appointment, but it's also, it is in our duties to approve that level of hiring. But
Yeah.
previously, it had been on consent, and so it made sense to have it be the first item of determination and
Yeah,
discussion. when we
and
had it.
maybe for clarifications, because I think I know where Director Odie is getting at. So within the MUD Act, there are 15 positions that get characterized that are considered non-civil service, and those have to be identified. So those are typically the director of, say, engineering, construction, or operations maintenance. That's within the MUD Act that we can identify 15 classifications. This position and other positions, say, for example, for the attorneys, these are separate from the MUD Act that we have historically brought to the board for appointment. And if I understand what you're asking, Director Odie, the question is, why does the board need to appoint these positions? And so technically, even for the director positions, the board technically per the MUD Act doesn't need to appoint the positions. It's just been the tradition. And for these positions as well, if we bring it to the board for this, one thing is they are non-civil service positions. If they're just hired outside a board appointment, then they become civil service positions. So if you'd like, I could bring this for a future discussion.
Yeah, because I really have no reason to second guess your decision-making, and so it'd be worth a future discussion. But with that, I can move approval.
I'll second.
So it was moved by Director Odie. We can have discussion after the second. That's kind of usually the way it goes. Moved by Director Odie, seconded by Director Chan. I think I saw Director Gomez first and then Director Lewis.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Director Odie's questions. I had the very same question when I was reading the packet, and I look forward to the item coming back to us so we can weigh in a little bit further on this.
And I want to know from Mike if he is excited about this opportunity to represent and do the work for the people.
You will have the opportunity to hear from him. And I see his beaming face back there, so.
He's waiting to see if we vote the right way.
Is he excited?
What is the right way?
The potential.
Well, I mean, based on what you just said, I think we're, in deference to the process, which is rigorous and includes external evaluators and the like. If there's no other discussion, we can vote on the item. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Anybody abstaining? Great. Congratulations. Thank you for your service to the district to date, and we'd love to hear a little bit from you.
All right.
Busy day. President Young, Board of Directors, Secretary, General Counsel, I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I'm very humbled by all the support that I have had the last couple days. I aim to give my best efforts in supporting DMC staff and doing my best I can to lead the future here at East Bay MUD. Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay. Look forward to hearing more from you in the future, right up there. Okay, we will now move on to item 12.1. And I will be calling for public comment actually before the board discussion on this item, which is a departure from what we ordinarily do. This item is not one that I think any of us are happy to see before us, but it is to review and discuss an incident that of racially motivated conduct or allegations of racially motivated conduct towards a member of the public and alleged behavior inconsistent with the Board of Directors Governance Manual by our board member, April Chan. That is the first item, is a review of that and discussion by the board. And then the second, part two, will be to consider whether interim actions are appropriate to address that. I want to start out by saying and reaffirming that this board cares deeply about the issues of racial equity, and as evidenced by that in our resolution passed in 2020 following the murder of George Floyd, to commit ourselves to becoming, and it's a long road, an anti-racist organization, and to take very seriously the conduct of everyone in the district with regard to the issues of race, fairness, and the conduct that we treat each other with under the district's values of stewardship, integrity, respect, and trust. And with that, I would like to ask Tiffany Conway to come forward for public comment.
Can I speak?
The mic is on and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, President Young, General Manager Chan, and the rest of the board. I'm here today to speak about a very troubling encounter I had with Director April Chan. I have provided the board with a detailed account of the incident, which I will summarize here today due to the time constraints. When I was first presented with the opportunity to exhibit my artwork at EBMUD, I jumped at the chance. As a lifelong Bay Area native, I am very familiar with the organization and have had relatives and friends employed there throughout my life. I arrived at the district on March 27th, 2025, to deinstall my work. I was accosted by Director Chan in the parking garage, questioning why I was parked in a space designated for the board. I explained to her that I was given permission by the security officer to park there in that space, and her response was rude, dismissive, and arrogant. She subsequently went upstairs to the security office to report me, and then later falsely accused me of threatening her. Director Chan's behavior has left me very distraught. It's very troubling to me that Director Chan felt her position as a member of the board justified with narcissistic behavior, as she attempted to put me in my place. And as a person of color, April Chan, you should be ashamed of yourself. For over a year, I worked with EBMUD Art Committee Chair to create artwork with the intention of beautifying the space, not just for EBMUD employees, but also for the public servants who sit on the board of directors, including Director April Chan. Her sad attempt to disempower me was a direct violation of EBMUD's core values: stewardship, integrity, teamwork, and most importantly, respect. Her violent effort to erase my humanity by weaponizing the security team proves that she's undeserving as her role as vice president of the board of directors. She does not embody servitude, accountability, or that's required to represent the communities that she serves. April Chan, I encourage you to evaluate your moral compass and your relationship with power. I encourage you to examine your relationship with anti-Blackness. And April Chan, I encourage you to reflect on your relationship with classism. When incidents like this occur, they are emotionally and energetically debilitating. It can take days or even weeks to recover. And as a full-time artist living in one of the most expensive regions in the entire world, I cannot afford to lose valuable time that can be spent running my business.
Risha, I will allow this to continue a bit longer, and I will allow the next speaker to have the same amount of time.
Although I feel totally justified to make those public disparaging actions of Director Chan against me public, I am mindful of how this negative publicity also impacts my livelihood as a full-time artist. I did your agency a service by beautifying your space without compensation. I was not paid for materials or labor required to produce a 16-painting exhibition, which is the largest exhibition that I've ever produced. This was for the enjoyment of your staff. Director April Chan could have simply minded her business, and instead she racially profiled me, creating a sour experience that overshadowed the joy of the art exhibit. How will the board atone for her behavior? I'm here today to demand a public apology from Director April Chan. Furthermore, EBMUD must commit to doing better, ensuring that artists of the Bay Area are treated with dignity and respect they deserve. Our contributions to this city's cultural landscape is invaluable, and we will not tolerate or be disregarded by people such as Director Chan. All of this was over a parking space that I was given permission to use. Finally, I would like to note that I received a message from many, but one in particular, of your employees at my website, identifying the fact that identifying that they heard about the incident with Director Chan. They expressed that they were not surprised about the facts surrounding my encounter with her, and stated that she has a history of behaving in this manner described, which is condescending and degrading of staff. So I received multiple emails about that. I will provide a copy of these comments to the district secretary, Risha Cole, so that they may be made of part of a formal record. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Conway. And let me say, personally, I very much enjoyed your exhibit and all of the exhibits that artists produce. And we've got a lot more to talk about. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Vernon Goines.
President Young, members of the board, general counsel, and members of the community. My name is Vernon Goins, and I have been retained by April Chan in connection with the allegations of racial profiling and discrimination. First and foremost, to Ms. Conway, who just spoke, anything that may have happened to you, anything that you may have interpreted as being insulting, offensive, disrespectful, on behalf of Ms. Chan, I truly apologize. Something like that should never occur, and in no shape, form, or fashion should anyone feel that way. But let's just be absolutely 100% clear. The EBMUD's resolution with regard to race, as it was connected to an African-American male who was slaughtered, that is racial profiling. That is racial discrimination. That involves somebody who died, who gave up their life, who had no opportunity to protect themselves. This situation here has nothing to do with race at all. The definition of racial profiling is when the offender effectively, or the offender profiles or selects someone, and it is within the law enforcement and in the prosecutorial world. To hear George Floyd associated or involved with this type of circumstance is insulting, and it's disgraceful. There's nothing anti-Black about someone disagreeing with someone else. There's nothing anti-Black about verbal altercation. The term agree to disagree is something that keeps us together. And at this inflection point in history, for a particular board member to use this as a way to weaponize the organization in order to bring this to the level of racism is just quite sad. Because the resources of this organization, the resources of our community, should be spent on something else. It shouldn't have to be involved with Ms. Chan hiring a lawyer. It shouldn't take the resources and the energy and the time that you all should be spending on much bigger and better things. I'd like to conclude by saying that if this board does, in fact, take into consideration or wants to consider suspending or temporarily removing Ms. Chan from her office positions, then it should provide her with due process, as we've been advocating, as we've been requesting for many, many years here. And for her due process rights to be violated in a manner such as this is a matter that should be heard in closed session. This is a matter that should be investigated first before you begin punishing or before you begin stripping people of their rights. And that would include a full investigation of not only Ms. Chan in interviewing, but also taking into consideration and being mindful and thoughtful and sensitive to Ms. Conway's perspective, but also to take into consideration those who are responsible for this. President Young, it is your duty and responsibility. You owe this to the public. No more wasting of valuable resources of this organization to threaten, to retaliate, or to try to curb behavior. A jury of this county has already decided against you. Please, board, I ask that you take into consideration the guidelines that are set up. A temporary removal is a removal, and Ms. Chan deserves due process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goins. As I indicated that I would at the outset of this item, the floor is now open to Director Chan.
President Young, we have two hands online for public comment.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for the first speaker, which is Yvette Rivera.
You have 3 minutes, Ms. Rivera.
You should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. I'm probably going to only need 30 seconds. I just want to say it's completely disgusting that President Marguerite Young invoked the name of George Floyd over a matter that involves a parking space. It doesn't surprise me, and I'm completely disgusted given East Bay MUD's institutional history of discriminating against minorities at East Bay MUD. That's all I have. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera.
The next speaker is Karina Lopez. You should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Good afternoon. My name is Sabrina Lopez from San Leandro. I want to, first of all, thank the board for taking this matter up as quickly as it can, and in the interest of public transparency. I'm very sorry for what Ms. Conway has experienced. It's imperative that the board holds the highest moral, ethical, and social justice standard in how it goes forward with this item. I believe there was some derailing of what the issue is by a previous speaker, the attorney that spoke earlier. Really, please do focus on what is at hand, and that is a person from the community has been injured, that there was inappropriate and abuse of power by an elected representative over a parking spot. I have been monitoring this situation, have seen that many members of the public are outraged. Please know that there are many people who are watching this very closely, and please do maintain the highest of all conduct and standards for this agency and for all matters that may happen in the future so that it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
We have an additional hand.
Okay.
Okay. Dale Silva, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. You know, I'm just so surprised this is happening. These accusations are being made against
Sir,
April.
could you
I've known April.
identify yourself?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Dale Silva. I live in Fairview. I'm speaking as an individual and not as a member of any board or commission. I want to express again my surprise that these accusations are being made so draconially against April. I've known April for 10, 12 years since her early days as a organizer in unincorporated Alameda County. I've never, ever witnessed a racist action or comment or anything about her. I'm wondering where all this came from. I mean, are we looking at this point of one person's word against the other? It looks like it, sounds like it to me, just based on what I've heard so far or what I've read. I would certainly appoint her, endorse her attorney's suggestion that she's being denied, apparently being denied due process, and I think she should be given that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else on public comment, or I'm going to close public comment?
No other hands for public comment.
Okay. Director Chan?
I actually wanted to apologize to Tiffany for any hurt feelings I may have caused. I don't see her here. But I think I'm just going to go ahead with the apology. I just want her to know that it was never my intention to hurt your feeling, well, to her feelings or challenge her worth as a person. I am truly sorry if my actions made her feel demeaned or disrespected. And I was going to say, in the event, if we ever meet in the future, I'll make every attempt to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And, you know, again, I sincerely apologize. And I do want to say on my own behalf that I have not gotten my side of the story out yet. I just hired, Vernon was so kind to just drop what he's doing and to help me with this. My side of the story has not come out, and I really hope that people reserve judgment, because that is part of due process for one. But, when, at the earliest time, and I'm sure that Attorney Goins will help me determine what that is, I will tell my side of the story. So please be fair, please reserve judgment. I can't really say anything right now. There are pending investigations. So that is my plea to you. Another thing is I want to apologize to the people inside East Bay Mud that work here. General Manager Chan, General Counsel, Public Affairs, anybody who had to take time to work on this issue and take them away from it. And Derry Moten, thank you so much. And I just feel terrible that this has become such an issue. And I would have much rather everyone spent their time on the real work at East Bay Mud. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Chan. I would like to clarify a couple things. One is that no determinations have been made. There are allegations that have been made in accordance with our processes here. There is, the allegations require us to address them. There is a violation that is potentially, could prohibit, prohibit harassment and discrimination on the basis of race, which is policy 6.06 and 6.07. In addition, the reason for the bringing the resolution forward is that while it was prompted by the horrendous murder of a Black man by police, it set a marker for us going forward into the future in terms of how we will address systemic racism, racial bias across our organization and among all of our employees, including our board members. That we, and so based on the nature of these allegations and the fact that the board member is a board member, a publicly elected official, I, as president, felt obligated to take action. I have no determination about the validity of the allegations. They are under investigation. There is an EEO investigation. There are security investigations, both from Director Chan and from Ms. Conway, alleging threats of violence. Those investigations have not been concluded. In addition, both of these things bring to light a question of whether there is an issue of conduct that violates our governance manual. There has not been an investigation in that regard, but that may be forthcoming based on the discussion here today. I appreciate Director Chan's apology, and our job is to, in the coming weeks, to conduct the investigations, to hear Director Chan's accounting of what happened, to interview other witnesses. And my hope would be to resolve that in a non-litigious way, suitable to both parties. That further, last Tuesday, due to the nature of the allegations and understanding the public light from which it was being viewed, under my authority as president, directed Director Chan not to represent the district in public on advice of counsel. Today, we are, since all of you are aware, I want to, open it to members of the board to address this, and then we will move on to item 12.2 and consider whether interim actions, and again, 12.2, interim actions that are consistent with what other public boards and agencies and cities have done in similar circumstances while investigations are ongoing to protect the district. Okay, so, and I'll open it up for this discussion.
I will start. I am represented by counsel, obviously, and so I want to make sure that he is speaking on my behalf.
Derek, can you comment on whether or not Director Chan's attorney has the ability to comment for her in this setting?
I believe.
Is that what you're requesting, Director Chan?
Yes.
The law certainly wouldn't prohibit it.
Would not prohibit it?
Would not prohibit.
Okay. I ask that he do so, I mean, is it within my, he's spoken, so I want to hear from other members of the board with regard to this before we ask for his thoughts, if he has additional thoughts beyond those he's already shared. Director Katz?
President Young, I support your actions to initiate an investigation pursuant to the policies of the district. I would like to ask the general counsel to comment about, and to the extent that other staff should be referred to, general counsel is welcome to do so, but to comment about our procedures as to interim protective measures when allegations of harassment and discrimination are made against a responsible agent of the district.
So we have no interim protective measures. I know that there was a.
I'm talking about the actions under 12.2 that are being considered. I think that's what he's referring to.
Yes, and I'm sorry, so what's the legal question? It's not a legal requirement that these measures be adopted or followed. It's simply.
That's not what he's asking.
What are factors for imposing interim protective measures while an investigation is pending as to allegations of harassment or discrimination?
That really is entirely at the board's discretion. We have no written factors for making these determinations. The intent of the process today was for you to hear the statements from Director Chan, from her attorney, from Ms. Conway, and make a determination as to whether or not you want to impose these interim measures.
What would it include? Preventing further adverse actions against a person we owe a duty to under FEHA or the UNRWA Act? Would that be one factor or framework to consider this? Preventing the risk of further action, is that an approach?
I mean, that would be a personal determination on your part. These are really political decisions to be made, and they are not, again, not a legal requirement.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see Lourdes here. Is she in
I can ask her to come down.
negotiations, or I saw her earlier. I guess the question I have is that, and maybe it's the secretary's office that could comment on this, but that other venues facing similar complaints or issues have taken interim actions such as the ones we're considering. And again, we're not at 12.2 at this point. I'm in 12.1, which is a discussion and reaction.
Yeah, and so I've asked Lourdes to come down. She is on her way. She can probably
Okay.
answer your question.
Are you asking for information from me? So just in my research on a couple of agencies who have recently gone through a censoring process, those two agencies actually removed their members from, not removed them from office, but censored them from specific duties. I did not read where there were investigations. In one instance, there was an investigation, so the investigation concluded, and the board voted after the investigation.
So that was a censure motion, and this is not a censure motion.
Right, but I did not read anywhere where there were interim actions taken. I can go back and review the documentation, but I haven't read where there were interim actions taken. So I wouldn't be able to speak to that at this time.
Okay.
I mean,
Director,
go ahead, sorry.
I'd like, I would like to give everybody on the board an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Okay. Director Gomez,
So,
should they choose to do so?
First of all, this is a very difficult moment for us as a board, and I want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge Ms. Conway Cornelius's experience. I understand your pain and your frustration, and these are indeed deeply concerning issues that you have raised. And I wish you were here, but you'll probably see this afterwards, want to thank you publicly for your work, for displaying your art, for making our environment a much nicer place while your art was displayed here. I also want to acknowledge and respect President Young's desire to make it clear that we are taking this very seriously. And indeed, I believe that your actions so far have proven that we are taking this very seriously, just by the fact that we have this item on our agenda and by the fact that we have started investigations into the situation. I also want to acknowledge Director Chan's right to due process. And before that, I also want to very much thank you and truly appreciate your sincere apology. I think that has gone a long way toward helping to make things right. Nobody's perfect, and certainly people make mistakes, and your apology was deeply appreciated. That said, I do look forward to hearing your side of the story. That said, also, we as a board have set a very high standard for ourselves. We historically, and through various resolutions and our values, have stated that we're going to hold ourselves to some very high standards. So with that, I know we're not on 12.2 yet, but I would, after giving this much thought, I think that we are on the gathering facts end of this investigation, and when we have gathered all the facts, I think it'll help inform any subsequent steps that we might take as a board. I feel that there's no need for immediate action today, given that the investigations are happening, and that once we have all the facts, we will be able to make a decision as to how to proceed and what, if any, consequences the behavior may have. So we have a responsibility to act on what we know so far, and I think that what we're doing today is that action. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gomez.
And I'll just note that Ms. Matthew is here if you had specific questions for her.
Yeah, Lourdes, can you speak to the, again, we're not on 12.2 yet, but could you speak to the authority that we have to act in terms of interim measures such as those proposed by me for consideration by this board? I cannot act it is on the board to determine whether or not to take that action. I'm merely presenting it as a consideration.
Correct. As General Counsel Derek McDonald stated, you know, the interim measures that are being proposed are strictly political, and it's inherent within your power as a board, and it's inherent in your power of appointing, you know, the directors to certain positions. And so it is within your inherent powers to take necessary measures you deem that may be necessary to de-escalate a particular complaint or a particular problem, to protect the integrity of an investigation, you know, and whatever purposes, you know, this board deems is, you know, required to, you know, to ensure fairness in the process, you know, but also to de-escalate and perhaps, you know, prevent further conduct that you may be afraid of occurring.
And is it a violation of due process?
That is a legal question with a
can
legal
speak to that.
conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah, so the law is pretty clear that in these types of board actions, you know, Director Chan is entitled to due process. It is somewhat minimal due process, meaning that she needs to be given a notice of the proposed action, an opportunity to respond, and then the board considers what they've heard and takes a vote. And that has happened. This was an agendized, you know, action, and Director Chan has had the process to respond. Furthermore, presumably there'll be due process afforded to Director Chan as she and her attorney are involved in the ongoing investigations and have their chance to fully tell Director Chan's side of the story.
Does anyone have?
Do others have?
Yes, do
Yeah,
others wish to comment?
I would like to comment, but I'd rather center other voices first. If they're interested in speaking.
I had a question earlier about the general application of our policies and procedures as to interim protective measures, understanding that the scope of what's on today's agenda may include some measures that are uniquely political and may have additional factors and considerations, but I would like to hear from council about the factors and scope for interim protective measures in general for an individual who is accused of harassment or discrimination, and in the context of any factor that you think is appropriate, but my understanding is that the purpose of interim measures is to make all efforts to prevent future harassment or discrimination. So could you please comment about what factors are appropriate to consider?
Sure. Generally, in the employment context, you do take certain interim measures to, like I said, de-escalate the situation, to prevent further harassment from occurring, you know, and also to protect the integrity of an investigation, to ensure that a person, you know, doesn't have a platform or the ability to, you know, influence witnesses, et cetera. So those are the primary factors. Sometimes it is safety, depending on the allegations. That could be a factor in determining, you know, whether to, you know, take interim measures. Most commonly, leave, paid administrative leave for, and again, I'm talking about employees. This is a little different situation. But those are the things that you would consider in imposing, you know, such interim measures.
And the district owes duties to members of the general public under the UNRU Act to not discriminate against members of the general public, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's I think I'll consider what you've said. Thank you.
Director Lewis, do you have anything?
Well, first of all, I want to, in full transparency, note that I know personally and professionally Attorney Goins. That said, I appreciate everyone's comments, and let me again say, and echo Director Gomez, what an awkward position. This is hard on everyone, everyone sitting here. I am concerned from a due process standpoint, especially with an allegation of racial discrimination or harassment. What I haven't heard as much discussion about, and which I sit and wrestle with, is frankly conduct. While I appreciate certainly the apology, and I am not at all surprised about the graciousness and the nature of Director Chan's apology, I am concerned with conduct. And at the end of the day, I wrestle with my obligation to do what is necessary, including on my own part, to protect the integrity of EBMUD and to ensure all citizens and ratepayers that they will be treated with respect and with regard, and that at the end of the day, director or not, I have to pay my bills the same as everybody else. So that said, I don't have a, I look forward to hearing from my colleagues. I hope that I have shared my concern. And again, to hold up my colleagues through this process, it's hard. It's hard on all of us, so thank you.
Thank you. Flip a coin.
At this point, I wasn't there. I didn't witness it. I don't know what happened per se. I do want to hear from both sides, but just the fact that we even have to address something like this gives me humongous pause, great concern, because this is not the way that we represent EBMUD. I have spent over half my life making sure that EBMUD looks good from my actions. But that's just my POV. So I want to hear more before I decide something else, but I definitely want to make sure that we do what's best for the district as well as all of the people we serve.
Thank you. Director Odie.
Thank you. I guess I'll go now. Appreciate my colleagues and their comments. I didn't want to put my opinion ahead of my colleagues, so I appreciate them speaking first. First of all, I want to apologize to Ms. Conway. I think what you did was brave. I wish you didn't have to do it. I think the events that happened to you reflect poorly on our agency and on our board. And you asked for two things. One is an apology, and two is for us to do better. And I appreciate my colleague taking care of the first part, which is delivering an apology. I mean, I understand that an attorney has to zealously advocate for your client, but I did not think de-escalation was in the cards during that presentation because there were some ad hominem attacks against the board president that I thought were inappropriate and unnecessary and probably would have better be not said. But with that said, I looked at this action plan in response to racial discrimination, and it basically said the reason we were doing this was because true leadership requires taking a critical look at our organization and identifying ways that we can do better. I mean, it didn't put any one event or incident, ahead of another or equal to the other. And then I look at the first, be it further resolved clause, and I'll read it. It's in the agenda. Listen to the voices of Black and African American employees at the district, in the external community, which to me includes Ms. Conway, and other impacted individuals, and provide space to engage in safe and productive conversations about dealing with and overcoming individual and systemic racism. And that's our direction. That's what the board in the past has told us to do. And it takes a lot of courage for somebody to come and make accusations like that. I don't think people would make an accusation like that. I don't think they would make it up. I just don't. I mean, you put yourself at risk, you put your career at risk, you put your livelihood at risk. So I think we have to respect the fact that Ms. Conway brought this complaint to us and, not dismiss it and not basically, pick one side or the other until we hear a complete investigation. I agree with the need for due process. I appreciate my colleagues' attempt at de-escalating with the apology. I look forward to hearing more on what, the actual true story is. I mean, I don't understand why we can't hear that today because we heard Ms. Conway's side of the story, but I just think we need to make sure we recognize Ms. Conway's voice and those like her because, there's life experience she has that I'll never have. And I'm privileged enough to not have those and grateful, but we need to understand where she's coming from. And we need to understand the impact of communications on her. No one is going to call the police on me for having a barbecue in the park. No one is going to put a knee on my shoulder for 8.5 minutes until I stop breathing. No one is going to pull me over because of the color of my skin. I can go on and on probably for another hour. So I think we need to be cognizant of that and look at this from the perspective of Ms. Conway and her life experiences and move forward from there. And I do appreciate all of my colleagues, especially your comments, Dr. Gomez, because you went first.
April, you wanted to say something?
I think I would like my counsel to come up and speak.
The only thing I'd like to add is two items. Number one, I'd like to thank the board very much for considering Ms. Chan's position, and I would agree with many of you that have underscored that you must hear both sides, that the investigation should be completed before taking any appropriate action, I believe. Second, that her apology was sincere. And again, I do understand that you hold yourselves up to very high standards, as board members should, and you owe a fiduciary duty and responsibility to the ratepayers and to the constituents. So I'm happy that that was underscored. The third item I wanted to address was the issue as it related to due process and specifically the guidelines. The guidelines are silent as it relates to this board or this particular entity having the either in the implied or the express authority to implement or to decide on any quote interim acts. And I think that given the nature and the seriousness of this particular type of action, Ms. Chan should be afforded the opportunity to be interviewed by someone who is a third-party neutral, an investigator who comes in, unearths the facts, and provides you, the board, with what their position or their opinion is with regard to what happened. So again, thank you very much for your consideration.
And to that, I would just say, I think, Derry, if you wanted to comment on that, but an external investigator has been retained with I believe the first effort, I don't know if effort is the right term, but to as the investigation goes forward, to attempt well, you can explain, you should explain it, Derry. Any other investigations that had, the security investigation is internal, I believe, and is waiting for a statement from Ms. Chan. Ms. Chan, there has been no statement provided, additional statement provided by her. The conduct investigation, if it goes forward, will also be handled by an external party, but it has not been initiated. And the governance manual is not silent on the authority of the board to make nominations and assign positions on the board. So that is, I believe that is, I believe I'm stating that correctly. I'd look for affirmation from our general counsel. Derry, do you want to explain what's the process is? Again, I will reiterate, there is no judgment that has been made. Investigations are ongoing, and these actions that are going to be, that I'm asking the board to consider are while those investigations are underway.
Yes, our general process, Procedure 614, is to follow kind of a process of ensuring that we're doing data collection, that we're actually doing fact-finding. So we have identified a third-party investigator to actually take the process on. So they have already been secured. They're ready to kind of start the process. And so what will happen from here is that they will do independent conversations directly with all parties, both two parties, and then any witnesses that we have, to identify and provide a kind of an updated report on what the actually data indicates. So that will be kind of the next process. The priorities that we've expressed to them, which are kind of the priorities we want to kind of overall work with, and part of our diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan is to look for methods of alternative dispute resolution as a first step. Is that as we do data collection, we actually find out kind of where we are, is that's our initial process, and then we continue with investigations to make sure we've collected all the data, but the ADR process is always the process that we want to kind of initiate any case where there is a challenge here. So that's our first steps. The timing for that, again, they've already been secured, and so they will begin their process as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Derry. Any questions for Derry on that end of things?
Not Derry,
Director Lewis?
my question's not for you, Derry.
Oh.
You just want to stand there. I just wanted to pick up on what Director Odie said and acknowledge the courage and leadership also of the President and Chair for having to undertake and proceed with this matter, and to certainly underscore the fact that when I consider and look at conduct, it also includes the treatment of board members and the President as we go through this process.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to put out as a, towards Ms. Conway's second request is to have a staff board committee with the art committee to talk about how we want to secure and appreciate our artists going forward, including designating parking spaces for them, but also making sure that they have all the respect and deference that they are owed for the gift that they have bestowed upon us, because it truly is a gift. So I think that I'll just direct that as President. Joey?
So, two brief things. Yes, we have declared designated parking for our artists. And it is something that gets taken care of methodically and regularly. So that's there. But maybe we need to amplify it. I don't know. Second question is, what's this time frame we're talking about working on this?
I asked that, have asked that a number of times. I do not want, I have in the past experienced way too much slow walking of issues like this. At the same time, it is very important that everyone that needs to be talked to get talked to. And so I would, it really depends on Ms. Chan and her attorney, as well as Ms. Conway and the other witnesses, and making themselves available to the investigator. I believe the security investigations are close to being concluded, if I'm not mistaken.
As long as we get the statements.
And depending on where we go with the second item before us, I will be talking to Director Chan, and I'm not to Derek at the General Counsel's office, as well as to Clifford about how to proceed on looking at the conduct issue, which is separate from, the EEO and security investigation.
Yeah, well, as you probably understand, the longer something gets dragged out, the more people think it's not being taken seriously, or they think that we hope that they forget. So we need to make sure that we're on this.
Yeah, I do, from what I have, and speaking with Derry, he cautioned me to be too optimistic about getting things done before the next board meeting, but I would certainly hope that we are not looking at more than a month. So.
Can I add to?
Director Gomez.
Yeah, I want to add and recognize two of my colleagues in particular. So Director Odie, I very much appreciated what you had to say about our previous resolution and listening to Black and African American voices and making sure that we are centering them in the conversation. And I also want to echo what Director Lewis said about conduct and how important that is. And also Director Jody Smith about, it's like this is what makes us who we are, is how we interact with everybody every day. And I just want to underscore the importance of that. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Goins, I'm sorry, but I do have to say something. And that is, I really do feel like I'm being convicted with absolutely no information from me. And there is, I just feel like that is very unfair. I have a side to this. I think I'm hearing people, and it's as if you're talking about somebody else. I have a career, I have a record of working with African Americans, having African American politicians endorse me. I really don't appreciate the undertones that I'm a racist. That's what I'm hearing from this board. I'm a racist. And that's not true at all. And I think one only has to look at my life and look at my career and see that that is not true. So I think it's very hard for you to judge without having heard my side. But still, jumping to, and the reason I haven't told my side is because I have been trying to get and work with counsel. I only hired counsel yesterday. And so I really feel that that's a good reason for not having come out and spoke. But I really do not appreciate this representation of me as a racist. So, and that I discriminate against people on the basis of race. You know, at this point, you know, I don't know where all of you think I come from, but you know, my family came here as indentured servant. I am not a privileged person. My family came here in indentured servitude to the United States. You know, anyway, so I'm just going to keep it at that. I apologize to my attorney for speaking, but this is stuff that I felt like I had to say.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move on to item 2. Andy? Is this on 2 or 1?
It could apply to either.
Why don't we move on to item 2, and you can, and for this, before we take any action, we will open for public comment.
The allegation made by Ms. Conway is a very serious allegation, and it absolutely must be taken seriously by the district. And that involves a thorough and fair investigation. And meanwhile, the evidence of conduct that we do have in our public records that we've received in public comment through statements from everybody who's spoken so far is quite concerning. And we have a duty to our mission to take appropriate interim protective measures. And I think we also have a history and culture as a board of individual directors taking the actions that are appropriate under the circumstances, and that is often the way things work best. We have seen that a few times in our recent past, and that has sometimes occurred without any investigation being necessary, and it sometimes occurred during the investigation process. In circumstances that range from very, very minor, but still in the best interests of the carrying out of the district's functions, and quite serious, rising to the level of a violation of the district's ethics policy. The allegations here concern civil rights and equal treatment of all members of the public, and my commitment and the district's commitment to anti-racism, especially anti-blackness, are very important, and I think deserve to be recognized by this board in this discussion, and so that we send a very clear signal that we take those concerns seriously. Along the lines of what we've heard about interim protective measures as we ordinarily apply them to equal employment opportunity, and analogously to treating all members of the public equally, I very much appreciate President Young quickly identifying that Vice President Chan should not be representing the district publicly while the investigations are pending. I think that type of activity without judgment as to the findings of any investigation are the most closely correlated to the risks that we consider interim protective measures for. And that is, I think, the kind of thing that we would informally expect, informally if it were not accepted for similar kinds of situations. And I see in our staff report, or the president's report, that measure has been agreed to by Director Chan. And I would, before we proceed to complete our discussion of additional possible political actions to get an acknowledgement about the agreement to that self-restraint, so that we understand the baseline of interim protective measures. And that, I think, is important in this discussion. I'll stop right there and look forward to hearing from colleagues about additional aspects of the conversation.
So can I address that, because that is a question for me. So what we discussed was that I would not be in public and speaking on behalf of the organization. And I am okay with that, but I want people to understand I represent 220,000 people. And so I can still speak on my own behalf as a person, as an individual. I mean, that's what I do 90% of the time anyways. When I'm in public, I speak for myself. But I will not speak for the institution.
Yeah, I did not remove Director Chan's ability to interact with her constituents or express herself, her opinions.
Yeah, and to the extent that I may have, I don't recall using a different verbiage in my recent comments, but what I'm hearing is not inconsistent with my intent.
So just for clarification, Director Chan has indicated she still expects to and will represent her district. Is that correct?
Yes. I understand there's a heat on me, but I see no reason to disadvantage my constituents. And if it is the collective wisdom of the board, and I understand that I have not given my side of the story yet. And I also understand that Tiffany Conway's allegations, people feel that that's serious. I will, just to make things less awkward, and at this dais, I will step down as vice president of EBMUD board. And there doesn't have to, is everyone agreeable to that? As an interim protective, as Andy keeps on calling them, interim protective measures. That is, I volunteer to do that until the end of the investigation. Oh, no.
What do we need to do to accept that?
Quick, just, if we're not even moving to 12.2, just want to note we have
That is
three.
12 no, we're in 12.2.
Okay, we have 3 hands for public comment, so I'm not sure where you want to take the public
Well,
comment.
I'm trying to ask what ordinarily, a motion and a second then opens the floor for discussion and including before the board taking action from comments from the public. So can I get clarification on whether there is an action needed from, a motion needed from the board to accept Director Chan's resignation or temporary step down from the position of vice president and chair of the planning committee?
So,
Or does it not include the chair of the planning committee?
No, I think from the vice presidency, I would like to still continue to be chair of the planning committee. I don't think I am, I think that that's fair. I have already agreed to not speak on behalf of the organization. But for someone who is just not been, has only been accused, I think that stepping down as chair, as vice chair, vice president from the EBMUD board would be would be not appropriate, but it's only temporary before the investigation
Okay.
is completed.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify what you were
That's what
agreeing to
I'm-
do. Okay. Derek, does a board member need to move to?
So the board doesn't need
Accept.
to make a motion to accept a temporary resignation or a permanent resignation. I mean, board members have the right to resign. So that's not necessary. If there are other actions you want to take, then at the end of the discussion, we would formulate a motion accordingly that may include an acknowledgement of her voluntary resignation, just to complete
Okay.
the record, but it's not necessary.
Okay. Joey?
So, as I understand, in most situations, if there's an investigation happening, people are usually at minimum advised and usually instructed to not speak on the subject to anyone other than who's representing you. I'm inquiring, is this applied here?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure that we all understand what's going on with that.
I mean, that is something that I would take the advice of my attorney about. I mean, I don't think that this board has a right to say what I can and cannot talk about, so.
I believe the intention of that is to make sure that either what you say is not misunderstood or that things get tainted or misconstrued. But this is yours.
Director Smith, things are already tainted and misconstrued right now.
Madam President.
Okay. So I have how many comment? Hang on a second. How many public comments?
You have 3 hands for public.
Okay.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I just would like some clarification. Can the board accept a voluntary resignation with the caveat? The caveat is until after the investigation, can we
Yeah,
accept?
yeah, that's, I mean, the motion that was under consideration was temporarily pending the results of the investigation and until such further action of the board may take at a future meeting.
And if that's the scope of
So I guess the motion would be something on the order of to accept the voluntary, or accept Director Chan's voluntary action to remove herself from the position of Vice President of the Board of Directors temporarily, pending the results of the investigations and until such time as the board may take action at a future meeting.
So as long as the scope of the temporary resignation or stepping down is clear, then you don't need a motion to accept it, as long as the scope is clear in the record. But so that's, I don't,
So
if
we
you,
can
so if you agree with the proposed action insofar as the vice presidency is concerned, you can simply voluntarily agree to step down for that period, and the board would not need to move to accept that.
So the question then becomes, what defines the end of the investigation? If does it conclude after, because my understanding, there are going to be 3, according to the correspondence that you responded to me. So the term investigation is vague and ambiguous. Which one are we referring to? What time period does it cover? When does this temporal process end?
Yeah, and those are good questions.
Investigation. So it's arguably until all the investigations are concluded, or is that what your resignation is? I'm just trying to get clarity and understanding. I mean, not resignation, but your temporary leave of absence.
So I believe the initial intent was to conclude the investigations, and I believe that would be all 3 investigations, although I'm not sure that there's been a determination on the 3rd investigation yet. once those are concluded, the matter will be brought back to the board to determine if some further action is needed, including, a vote to permanently remove Director Chan from the vice presidency and committee chairs.
It is my understanding that the president of the board, also reinforced by other board members, is that you're seeking a very speedy yet complete investigation with the hopes of it being concluded by the next board meeting. My recommendation,
Within a month. Our
within a
next board
month?
meeting is 2 weeks from now.
Okay, so within a month. So then why don't we put parameters on time?
That is the goal. What we found in investigations is that no matter how speedy we try to make them, sometimes witnesses simply are not available, and that tends to prolong them. That may not happen here, but we cannot guarantee an end date for these investigations. I don't believe.
All of the witnesses outside of the two principals work here. I want this to be concluded within a month, and that does depend, Mr. Goines, on your client being available as well as Ms. Conway, who I believe is already in contact with the investigator. So the EEO investigation is probably the lengthiest one. And they sometimes take a really long time, too long, way too long, which is why we're also interested in an ADR resolution rather than a litigious one. So, we can recalendar it for consideration a month from now, at the board meeting, at the first board meeting in May. I think that doesn't mean that it is, we may say that, one or more of the investigations isn't done. We may be able to report on,
I think,
Well, I would just like to add, or probably recommend, that my client's temporary resignation be for a period of no more than 30 days. So today is the 8th, May 7th. That should be the time period. That should give more
but
than.
you know what? I don't feel comfortable with a negotiation happening here.
Well, this is not a negotiation. This is a proposal that's being made by my client, and the specific proposal that is being made is.
Our first board meeting in May.
Excuse me,
is
please.
May 13th.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
The proposal that is being made is that she step down for office for a temporary basis for the next 30 days. That is the proposal.
Madam President?
The motion I would make is that we calendar the item for reconsideration on May 13th, which is our first board meeting in May, and until that time, unless the investigations are concluded and an action is taken, I guess, at a special board meeting, that that the voluntary step down from the office of vice president happen till that date.
Counsel, that's an inappropriate motion. My client is not
Okay, well, let's do
requesting, my client is not requesting of any board action. She's specifically making a statement and asking for the board to accept. It's not a proper motion before the board.
We'll make a motion.
So I think we're still in the determination and discussion phase on this item. You have proposed a period of 30 days. What I understand President Young to be saying is that the period would be until the first board meeting in May. Please correct me if I'm wrong, which would be May 13th.
Okay, what you're doing, Mr. Goines, are you making a motion on behalf of your client that needs a second?
No, I'm actually having a discussion and trying to have some type of clarification. So that way things are clear. So the only thing that I was asking, thank you very much for that clarification, counsel.
And I'd just like to point out that
Yes.
This is the board president's, this is the board's meeting. I'm not the board. So please,
Okay.
I'd ask that you address your remarks.
So I will direct my attention to you, President Young. And that is, if you are proposing May the 13th, that is more than reasonable.
Thank you. Okay. So, I believe we need,
Before we leave this topic, is it okay for me to speak?
Go ahead.
Before we leave this topic, I think that the issue of due process is still something that concerns me. And so, the fact that this has been held in open forum, and I have been in the room with directors' investigations, it was always in closed forum. I mean, we didn't need to do this in open forum. But I think I would like some clarity about exactly what the investigation is going to be. Derry is saying ADR, and I'm not exactly sure how that,
You have to agree to it.
I'm not exactly sure what the process is for that. So,
General Counsel, can you please speak to the appropriateness or the requirements that we have for addressing issues such as this in open session? I was specifically instructed that we could not discuss this.
That is correct. There's simply no Brown Act basis for holding these discussions in closed session. In the past, when we have discussed board members in closed session, there's been the context of active litigation. There is a personnel exception where these things can be discussed in closed session in relation to personnel. However, that exception specifically does not apply to elected officials.
I'm just saying what I've seen, what has been my experience, Derek.
So if that is the case with regard to the application of this to personnel, I believe council came up here and drew many analogies to what happens in the employment sector when there are allegations of discrimination, racial, and things of that nature. So I beg to differ as it relates to slicing and scalpeling now. The difference between a board member and an employee with regard to the investigative approach and what you just said.
So the questions regarding, with your permission, I can respond. The questions regarding personnel considerations was regarding like what factors can the board consider by analogy in making the determination today. But the Brown Act and the exact language in the Brown Act is very specific that it does not apply to elected officials, the personnel exception.
Director Lewis.
Yeah, I wanted to express my discomfort with this type of discussion and legal analysis back and forth during this board meeting. I'm also somewhat perplexed because I understood that Director Chan was offering to step aside until the completion of the investigations in order to avoid us as a board having to take a vote. I don't believe that is now, I'm not sure if that's the case after council was up here. So it almost seems like I just want some clarity because it appeared that Director Chan was acting in a manner to avoid a vote and in the best interest of the board, one way or the other, so.
And all I need to know is, do we have to vote in order to accept her temporary resignation from the board? We can pass a resolution that acknowledges that she has done so and saying that the and I know we need to do that, would need to do this at our next board meeting, is to nominate and appoint an interim vice president to serve during that time.
If it's clear on the record, if the period for which she's stepping down is clear on the record, then no vote is needed. And
Okay.
my understanding is that period is now until May 13th.
Okay, great. Let's take public, let's take
After public comment.
Let's take public comment.
Carolyn Weisinger, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you so much. You all can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to first identify myself. My name is Carolyn Weisinger. I'm not speaking on behalf of any board or committee that I sit on, but I am the mayor of El Cerrito, and I wanted to take great exception to the way that some members of the body, as well as people in the room, have been trying to diminish the idea of anti-Blackness. And it's always disheveling for me to be in a room where white people understand anti-Blackness and white supremacy, but people of color, specifically Black people, don't understand anti-Blackness and white supremacy. I want to also acknowledge the fact that George Floyd is a distant cousin of mine, and I work very closely with the family, and we talk a lot about how people in public spaces activate his name. You don't have to participate in a violent act, a physically violent act, to actually contribute to anti-Blackness. That's not how this works. You can still contribute to anti-Blackness by the way that you behave. But you are correct in one thing. It's not just about anti-Blackness. We're talking about classism. Because what happened is basically someone saw a young Black woman who didn't look like she belonged there, and they acted on that. And I want to be very clear that that's what's happening. I don't like the fact that people in this room are diminishing her experience, whether or not there is another side. There was certainly something that happened. And, you know, we saw just around our country just this week that millions marched across our nation around the things of getting hands off certain issues in the community, but the 92% of Black women weren't there. And they weren't there because of things such as this, because people will put on and listen to Black woman's shirt, but they won't actually listen to Black women. So I want people to acknowledge and understand the ways that they are behaving in this space, the emotional harm, and the fact that people across this community, across this region, are paying attention to the behaviors here. We should never have any person of color, especially a Black woman, be treated like this by non-Black people of color, and quite frankly, Black people. And that's what I have to say on the item. Remind you that people in your constituency, the 270,000 who elected you, I cannot stand when public officials do that. The people that elected you don't give you deference to do whatever you want to people. There are so many Black people in that district who are watching how the board reacts to something like this. So I hope that you all take this into the account and really reflect on why you even had a Black History exhibit in the first place. What was that supposed to say? And with that, I yield my time.
Thank you.
Jamlia Smith, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Jamila Smith Folds. I am here to speak on my own behalf and not on behalf of any organization or board that I am on. With that being said, I am the board member for West Contra Costa Unified School District. Here's my statement. There is no neutrality in the journey of anti-racism. You are either allowing racism to persist or actively fighting against racism. Racialized harm has occurred. Anti-racism is the active process of learning and unlearning. The empathy bias that is happening at the expense of what happened to this Black woman is unacceptable. Fragility, obfuscation, and denial of behavior have all shown themselves to overshadow this Black woman's experience. Tainted is the reputation of this organization now. Work must be done to restore and reconcile your anti-racist policy with the director's behavior. Be very clear. You must understand the why behind your behavior, no matter how many Black friends or associates or good relationship one has. One can still do racially harmful behavior. Black women in this country have historically been denied their humanity. Understand this was not about a parking space. This was about control and not being obeyed. Board, there is no neutrality in fighting anti-racism. You must pick a side. I am complete.
Thank you. There's a third, yes?
There is. There is a fourth, and there may be a fifth.
Okay.
Some hands keep going up and down. We have Cheryl Sudduth. You should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Gracias. As with the previous two speakers, I am speaking on my own behalf and not for any elected position or board that I may be on. I currently chair the Northern California Environmental Caucus, as well as West County Wastewater Board of Directors, of which we partner with EBMUD. I wasn't going to speak, but I do need to say this. As elected officials, I'm going to speak from a different perspective. There's an important lesson in governance that we face right now today. As elected, it hardly matters what we think, what we did was correct, even if we thought we were acting in the right. What matters in these situations, as in every situation, is that when something occurs and someone is harmed, not the impact, but someone is harmed. My mother used to say, my grandmother used to say, is that you rectify that error. And when EBMUD has taught it that it has these policies, especially these policies on all of the isms, you don't get to walk on the edges of that. You jump right into the middle of it, regardless of whom is right or wrong. And to sit here and get slapped in the face about hearing a side, there is no side. There is no side. This woman has told you that she is harmed. Many times we have to give an apology, and an apology that is a month late is a month wrong. So when we say that most of us, we have a problem that we don't mitigate the additional harm. And when you bring an attorney in who has attacked not only the board, but this woman who has been harmed, and then you apologize, no. You have to mitigate the damage and any additional harm. When you necessitate an apology with a but for or but and, it is no longer an apology. You must know when one is required, and the manner in which you give it is just as important as the words that you speak. We are not royalty, we are public servants that serve at the will of the people. And when we have to learn how to do right, be right, and when we err, you have to speak right. You cannot represent the people unless you do it in the proper way. Stepping down is stepping down, and you don't do it with a if I do this, I deserve. You don't deserve anything except what the people give you. When you do something, you own up to it. Accountability is just as important as what you think your reputation is. Your reputation is the ability to do right when people are not looking. And to say, if you really feel that you have wronged someone, then you take accountability for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karina Lopez is back up to speak again, and this is on 12.2, since we're on 12.2. President Young?
Okay.
Karina Lopez, you should be able to unmute
Thank
your
you
mic.
very much.
You're welcome. Your
Thank
3
you very
minutes
much.
start now.
I find that
You're breaking up.
What's happened here is really egregious and must act appropriately. It's one thing to have resolutions to say, oh, we're not a racist organization, we're an inclusive organization. But then there's actions, louder words. Hope, as I had said earlier, that your actions do match your words on the board today and forward. And I know many of you personally, I know you will. The thing that really concerns me about this current agenda item is how the attorney was allowed to steamroll the board. Process-wise, it was really out of order. In the previous item, he came in as a member of the public. In this case, he came in as a negotiator. Which one is he? Is he a member of the public or is he a negotiator? I think there needs to be some discussion amongst the board about how process will happen in May, how people get to speak, and whether they get a disproportionate amount of time. I mean, I'm not going to get as much time as that attorney got, obviously. And I actually live in the ward. I am a ratepayer. I am a voter.
I am a constituent, and I know I'm not going to get as much time as attorney. I only get 3 minutes to talk. And so this was not a fair process. It was very biased, I think, in this last item, with the attorney given so much ability to really be out of bounds and really be a bully to the board. Thank you.
I would just clarify that we did confirm, April asked that, Director Chan asked that her attorney speak for her. General counsel affirmed that there's no prohibition against him doing so. So in so doing, at that time, he was acting in that capacity. Perhaps we should have not had him speak in public comment as a member of the public, since he was already representing Director Chan, but that's water under the bridge. I think all of us, or I certainly had the first board meeting in May in my head as a check-in point, so I don't feel manipulated or unduly, I do feel some things about what Director Chan's attorney said and alleged with regard to my conduct and my motivations that I'm going to remain silent on. We are, I know you have another public commenter, right? Okay. And I'm not really responding to you, Ms. Lopez. I'll reserve my comments.
You ready for the next speaker?
Yes, next person.
KC 2019, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning to all. Thank you, Risha. Good morning, board. So my name is Lee Evans, and sorry I needed to update my picture here on Zoom, but I'm actually coming to speak as an employee. So I just want to apologize to the artist about the behavior that was experienced within the building. And, I encourage, the board to look at the history. And I'm not saying why this behavior might have happened. I think that as an organization, there's a little history that we could probably be looking at to make sure we're not repeating, because this would not be a first time that we've had issues with the way that East Bay Mud behavior. I think there's surveys out there that also speak to this type of behavior. I want to thank everybody who came and spoke, and I'm glad to see people speaking up for themselves. I can understand a misunderstanding, but that doesn't seem to be a door that we like to open here. So, I do want to say that we need to remember our history, and, even this practice here alone, has 2019. I got many DIOs that are holding up, and you should see how long it takes for the employees who work here to get through a DIO process. So to see that the board can snap its finger and get it done in a month, I just wanted everybody to know that it wasn't unnoticed, and it's noted. And I appreciate everybody coming. And again, we are servants to the public. So as an employee of East Bay Mud and has somebody who knows the history of some of the behaviors within East Bay Mud, I do want to apologize for any bad behavior, regardless of the reason why that you may have received in our halls. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
That concludes public comments.
Okay, that concludes public comment, unless there's another hand that goes up in the next 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Director Odie.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on just a couple things. First of all, we're elected, but to me, in my opinion, that just gives us the right to sit up here and vote on the agenda items. We don't have a right to be a committee chair. We don't have a right to be on a committee. We don't have a right to be an officer. And to me, those are privileges. Those are not rights. Our only rights is to be elected, vote on the agenda, and represent our constituents. And second of all, I was a little taken back, maybe a little more than a little, that we accused our colleague of being a racist. I did not say that. I did not hear any of my colleagues say that. And I don't think you conflate listening to the voices of Black and African American members of the external community with being an accusation of racism. So I was a little taken back by that. I think Ms. Conway made a prima facie case that something wrong happened to her, and we have to listen to our voices. It's not a lot different than, the Me Too movement, where, you have to take someone's accusation seriously, but that doesn't mean we called you a racist. So I was a little offended by that. That's it.
Okay. We have, as Director Odie said, being up here does not afford us any right other than voting on agenda items. We decide who sits on what are largely ceremonial offices, as chair, as president, as vice president. That said, those positions require and demand of those holding them to uphold the highest possible standard of conduct. And that is not to say that there aren't times when there's a flub or a mistake. And I reflect when I first learned of this incident, my first reaction was wondering what I would have done if it had been me in the garage. And I think I would have said, thank you so much for honoring us with your work. And I have yet to hear that. And I think we are compelled to listen to the voices of Black people and address anti-Blackness in whatever way we can. And to the extent that DIO is slow walking EEO investigations, we need to hear about that. This is not per se an EEO investigation, but we are just as compelled to investigate it with the diligence owed to our public, to our ratepayers, to our board members who are involved in that process. To me, that is what due process is. And I appreciate Director Chan's willingness to step down while we conduct the investigations. I do not, it will continue to be up to the board to determine who the vice president is, who the chair of the planning committee is, who the chair of any committee is, who the president is. It was not so long ago that we removed a president who had been elected. It was not so long ago that a committee chair stepped down for reasons related to his office. So we're not doing those things of moving people around are not unprecedented and they're not new. And they've happened for different kinds of reasons. And I think that we do have the opportunity here to send a message that we take it seriously. So I appreciate Director Chan's willingness to step down from the role of vice president. I would like to make a motion that we take the action of also removing her for that in the same vein from the chair of the planning committee.
Point of information.
Mm-hmm.
Is that on a temporary basis?
Yeah, it's the same temporary basis as the other one is. It means it gets revisited on May 13th, and we decide whether to continue it or not, depending on what's happened with the investigations and anything else.
I'm just gonna say, I just feel that that is very severe, given the fact that I already have given up my ability to represent East Bay Med in public, make remarks on behalf of the institution, and the fact that I just voluntarily stepped down as East Bay Med vice president. And these are still just allegations, even though, what I'm hearing is, yeah, so that's just an,
I'm just making the motion, waiting for a second. If there isn't one, there isn't one. And there appears not to be a motion, so that one will be set aside. The record shows that Director Chan has agreed to temporarily step down from her role as Vice President of the Board of Directors to continue refraining from speaking on behalf of the district in public settings. And I think that concludes this item. Yes.
Clarification for the record, is this until May 13th or until the investigations conclude?
Well, the board has to decide to take action, I think, or not. At our next meeting, we will, because it's the next time we can do this, we will nominate and appoint a new vice president. Interim vice president.
If the investigations have not been concluded.
If the investigations have not been concluded, sure. But the board will have to take,
So,
I don't think we can predict exactly what the agenda item will be if it's at the next meeting. I mean, if the investigations are concluded, are concluded, we may have an agenda item to either make permanent the removals or drop them or something else. We don't know.
so
Reconsideration, reconsideration.
what I'm hearing, just for, I think for the sake, for all of us, what I'm hearing is Director Chan is willing to step down temporarily until May 13th, and that on item 12.2, the board is not taking any additional action. And then come May 13th, whether or not the investigations are complete or not, then the board will have to take up for consideration at that point in time any further action, if I'm hearing what's happening correctly.
Would it be appropriate procedurally to table 12.2 until May 13th? The motion?
Yes, you can, that
Yeah, I mean,
would
we
require a
can do
motion,
that.
a second, and a vote to table it. So
I move that we table 12.2 until May 13th.
Well, or may, just take,
Well, you gotta,
I'll be the seconder of the motion if you'll accept an amendment that we could bring it up at our first board meeting in May with conditions.
I'll accept the motion. I'll accept it friendly amendment.
Discussion?
I don't know how you do that if you're accepting it till the 13th, but.
So the motion is
To table item 12.1, 2. And I guess really it's until such time. You want to?
So
Well, the items tabled to the May 13th board meeting, unless the board is prepared to take action at its next meeting, because the investigations have been concluded.
which would be up to you then to determine whether or not 12.2 is re-agendized as a new agenda item or
Yeah, or
whether
something
not
else is
something
in
else
its
is.
place, right. I mean, it basically means it's tabled, doesn't mean, I mean, we don't really need to say anything else, do we? About the, but until when?
Well, you would continue the item, table it to a date certain. So it would be until May 13th. Typically, when you continue an item to a certain date, you should consider the item on that date. The caveat here is that you may decide that the investigations may be complete and you may want to bring a different action to the board. So that complicates things.
Couldn't we just bring a different action to the board for the first meeting in May?
Yes, you may also just.
Right, which might void
the following.
the 12.2.
I believe I heard you say that when you proposed an amendment to the motion. That was my interpretation of what you said.
Let me take a step back and dip into Sturgis here. Technically, this motion has already failed. There was no second. So I don't know that there's anything to table.
Well, no, this motion
No, the
to remove her
second
from the
just had to
planning
do with
committee
the-
failed.
With the planning committee.
This one did.
Sure.
Oh, the entire, oh, okay.
Yeah, she only.
Well,
Yes, that's true, yeah.
it failed to get a second, so it doesn't, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. I think whether or not your
Availability
agenda,
of another motion is still present.
you can table this, which means that you intend to bring this up again on the 13th, or you can simply not table it and then just leave it to the president's prerogative as to whether or not to bring back an interim measure based on the progress of the investigations, or to propose something more permanent or not. You have options.
I would propose that you consider just leaving what happened today here and then see what happens between now and the first meeting in May. You're gonna have an opportunity
Okay.
to see what goes on that agenda
okay.
and then on the subsequent agenda.
So what is?
So
there would be no
it's,
motion.
we're just leaving it. We didn't take action, no action was taken.
So can you please just state that you're going to withdraw your second to the motion made by Director Lewis? And then that'll take off the vote for tabling 12.2 until May 13th.
I'm withdrawing my second to the motion made by Director Lewis.
Thank
Director
you.
Lewis will withdraw her motion.
Thank you.
All right. What's next?
Are we done with 12.2?
I think we're done with 12.2, yes.
13.
13.
Okay, we move on to legislative update.
Yes.
We have Kathy Viatella here.
Thank you, everyone that participated in that.
Okay. So President Young and members of the board, I am here before you to present the actions that were taken at the Leg HR Committee this morning on our board report with several bills for positions and an update, an information item. I am happy to walk through the bills. I can do them briefly or in detail to get you to a position today to take a vote on the staff recommendations. So what would you prefer?
Brief is probably good.
A brief walk through these? Okay. So there were several bills. The first one is SB 431 by Senator Araguin. The purpose of this bill is really to classify assault or battery against a public utility worker or worker engaged in essential infrastructure work as a punishable offense. Under existing law, professionals like peace officers and firefighters and emergency care workers are protected under the law, and it is a punishable offense of imprisonment in jail, not to exceed 1 year, or a fine, and a fine not to exceed $2,000 or both in this instance, if there is an assault or battery against them. This bill would basically ensure the same protections are afforded to public utility workers that are engaged in essential infrastructure work, and the bill defines essential infrastructure work, except it doesn't explicitly define that to include wastewater system employees or professionals. So we are recommending a support and amend position on this bill. That means we would continue to support the bill even if we were not to get the amendment, but we're just trying to see if we can get a clarification in the bill language. So that is staff recommendation. Your board packet has information on the supporters and opposition.
What's the opposition to the bills based on what?
Opposition to the bill is essentially based on, these are organizations that are concerned with criminal justice reform, and so they're coming in with adding and expanding, a category of punishable offenses, right?
Okay.
So staff recommendation is to support and amend. Would you like me to go through all of them and then you will vote?
What's the pleasure of the board?
I would recommend that. I think it's
Yeah,
good.
go ahead.
Go through all of
Keep
them.
going.
Okay. So the next bill is SB 599. This is by Senator Caballero. This is a bill that deals with atmospheric rivers and the methods for doing research and for forecasting. So the bill would extend the scope of the Department of Water Resources Atmospheric Rivers Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations Program to include the development of an extended atmospheric river forecasting methodology so that they would look at essentially both seasonal forecasts that cover 1 to 6 months and then subseasonal forecasts covering 2 to 6 weeks. Basically, this would help, it would benefit the district by providing more accurate data and long-range forecasting certainty, and we could use this information, our water supply operators, to make better informed reservoir storage decisions. There are no additional costs to the district from this bill. We have supported similar measures in the past, and staff is recommending a support.
Questions? Just one question I have is whether DWR's ability to do this may need to be enhanced by the potential loss of resources from the federal agencies that provide much of this data.
So there have been informational hearings about what are some of the federal cuts in the budget affecting various departments. And the Secretary of Natural Resources testified in one of those hearings that they have staff monitoring that and they're looking to backfill it. So this potentially could be impacted by that. There could be a potential budget action to fill that void and gap, and the state would take on some of those duties. So this bill would have a fiscal impact. It will go through appropriations, and we'll know more as we get through the budget process in May.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, the next bill is SB 654. This is by Senator Stern. This bill is actually allowing the California Environmental Protection Agency to enter into a new 3-year contract for up to a total of no more than $2 million to support the program, basically to continue the administration of the Water Energy Nexus Registry program. The district had a hand in helping set that program up. The registry has been administered by the Climate Registry in collaboration with Cal EPA since 2017, and it provides participants like the district with standardized accounting guidance to measure, track, and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions associated with their operations. Tracking this data allows the participants to then better manage emissions reductions, increase water efficiencies, and achieve sustainability goals. Helping the state, achieve its climate goals. We have been committed to carbon neutrality by 2030 for direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions from the water and wastewater sectors. That has been expressed in our Energy Policy 7.07, which was revised last fall. And so our ability to continue to track those emissions through the WEN registry is an important action to helping us achieve our goals. So, and we've been doing that since 2019. There are no anticipated costs to the district from this bill, nor would we have to make any changes in how we report. This is just continuing the program. So we are recommending a support position for your consideration. Any question about the registry in this bill? Okay, the next bill, SB 682 by Senator Allen. This is the PFAS bill. This is a bill that's coming back. Senator Skinner had a bill last year, SB 903, which was really looking at taking a comprehensive approach to banning the use of PFAS in household and industrial products. Historically, the state, as I've reported before, has been taking kind of a piecemeal approach by banning PFAS products in separate bills over the years, which we have supported, some of which have moved forward, and some of which have been vetoed by the governor because of the complexity in enforcing them. So currently, there are bans on firefighting foam, textiles, cosmetics, juvenile products, and paper-based food packaging. So this bill, SB 682, unlike Skinner's bill last year, SB 903, this bill takes a more flexible approach and actually phases in the bans in various products over a period of 3 separate targeted dates. So January 1, 2027, it would prohibit the distribution, sale, or offer for sale of cleaning products, cookware, dental floss, juvenile products, food packaging, and ski wax that contains unintentionally added PFAS. And then in January 2033, the list would be expanded to products not on that ban list in 2027, unless the Department of Toxic Substances Control makes an evaluation and determination that the use of the PFAS in the product is currently unavoidable. So if it's unavoidable, then they would be subject to a later date in prohibition, which would be 2040. And then there's that 2040 date. And again, it expands the list to include other products like refrigerants, solvents, propellants, personal protective equipment, and fire suppressants. Again, unless the Department of Toxic Substances and Control determines that the use of PFAS is unavoidable. So by phasing, it's basically giving the industry a longer runway to actually come up with an alternative that wouldn't have an unintended consequence, right? So they don't go and pick something that is equally as harmful to public health and the environment. There's some additional provisions in the bill, so the Department of Toxic Substances and Control, could ban PFAS sooner if it found that it was feasible. It would establish a petition process for the manufacturers to seek a currently unavoidable use determination from the department, and it would require the department to adopt regulations to implement this methodology before January 1, 2027. So we supported SB 903 last year. We are recommending a support of this bill to take this more comprehensive approach, and it's been consistent with our position on past legislation. So there's a pretty extensive list of supporters and opposition, and this bill has a coalition of sponsors, which is the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners, the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, Clean Water Action, Environmental Working Group, and Natural Resources Defense Council. So any questions on this one? Okay. And then the next set of bills, of state bills, these are the validating acts. So every year, the legislature enacts 3 bills known as the validating acts. They're usually 3. And they retroactively correct procedural errors or omissions that public officials of state agencies, cities, counties, or special districts may inadvertently make. And every year, we bring these to the board for support position. The validating acts, they benefit the district. So it protects investors from any minor procedural mistakes in bond issuance or other official acts that we may make. And there is no official support or opposition letter to these right now, positions to these right now. We're recommending staff support. Any questions about the validating acts? Okay. And then the last piece of legislation is a federal bill, and you could view this as kind of a companion bill to the state bill on atmospheric rivers. This one is authored, it's a Senate 322 by Senator Padilla, and it's intended to reduce flood risks and enhance emergency preparedness by improving atmospheric river forecasting. The bill requires the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to work in collaboration with universities to establish an atmospheric river program within the National Weather Service. And then that program will be responsible for developing, accurate and effective storm forecasts and warning in collaboration with both public and private partners and across the different weather forecasting sectors. It would evaluate innovative observation tools and emerging technologies to improve atmospheric river forecasting and modeling and warning systems. And then it would authorize NOAA to procure equipment, aircraft, and do personnel contracts to monitor atmospheric rivers each winter. And finally, improve the communications around atmospheric river hazards. So again, this would bolster state efforts to have a federal program if this were to move forward. Obviously, funding may be an issue. And staff is recommending a support position on this one. There is no official support or opposition list for this bill. So any questions about SB 322? I'm sorry, Senate 322.
Do we have a motion?
I would like to move that we approve the recommended positions on all of these bills.
Motion by Director Gomez, seconded by Director Katz. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstain? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you very much. I just have one information item, which is good news. The good news is I am really pleased to report that our amendment to the Municipal Utilities District Act, our enabling legislation that corrects this sort of gap in time for when we use the board appointment process, when there has been someone has stepped down from the board, that language which you supported. We took forward, we got it into the Senate Local Government Omnibus Bill. So that is actually now been introduced. We have expressed our support for the bill. It is moving forward. We'll continue to express our support for it, and we'll keep you updated as appropriate. So
Great.
yeah.
That's good news.
All
That is
right.
good news.
And I will suspend any other updates in the interest of time. I know you have a public hearing this afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now into the public hearing.
Yes. Oh, that was our last determination and discussion item. Sorry. No water supply report.
And then that'll come later.
What?
It'll come after the public hearing.
Oh, okay. Because that's an information item, not a determination item. Gotcha. Okay. Complicated agenda today. All righty, we're now at agenda item 10. This is a public hearing to receive a report on job vacancy rates of the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 21, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 39, and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Locals 444 and 2019, as required by California Assembly Bill 2561, or AB 2561, titled Local and Public Employees, Vacant Positions. The public hearing is now open, and we will take public comment followed by presentations, following the presentations by staff and the bargaining units. And we'll start with Cindy Sharon, Director of Human Resources.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. I'm Cindy Sharon, Director of Human Resources. I am here along with Vincent James to provide a very brief update on California Assembly Bill 2561. I will be providing some context regarding the bill, the district's vacancy compliance reporting by bargaining unit, and we will also go through some of our recruitment and retention as well as outreach efforts relating to those vacancies. So to start off with, just some brief background. AB 2561 was signed into law September 22nd, 2024, and was added to the California Government Code Section 3502.3. Essentially, AB 2561 was created to enhance transparency and accountability in public sector staffing. The key aspects of the requirements basically requires public agencies to report out the status of job vacancies along with recruitment and retention efforts. This is to be done annually at a public meeting per fiscal year. The presentation has to be made before the budget is adopted. The district unions also have the right to make presentations at the public hearing concerning the various positions within their bargaining unit, which we have invited the unions to also speak today. If the vacancies in a bargaining unit reach or exceed 20% of authorized full-time positions and a recognized union requests it, the district must provide the following at a public hearing. And so today qualifies as a public meeting. The total number of job vacancies within the bargaining unit, the total number of applicants for these vacancies, the average hiring duration from job posting to completion, and opportunities to improve compensation and other working conditions that may impact our ability to recruit or retain in that specific classification.
And to be clear, we have not hit that threshold.
Correct, and that's what I was moving towards. We have not hit that 20% threshold. However, we are providing a status of those vacant positions by bargaining unit. And I will go ahead and hand it over to Mr. James to share that data with you.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors, General Manager, and General Counsel. I'm going to go through the next couple slides here. What you see in front of you is Local 2019 and their current vacancy rate. The vacancy rate shown is 9.3%. But if you take into account the workforce internship program that includes engineering aides, IT interns, and ranger naturalist classifications, the vacancy rate is actually 7.61%. Although not required by statute, I did include the different classifications of the vacancies. And also, I'd like to point out that we are currently in the recruitment process for Accountant 2, Assistant Engineer, Associate Civil Engineer, Associate Mechanical Engineer, Associate Electrical Engineer, Engineering Designer, Field Services Rep, Senior Administrative Clerk, and Software Engineer. In addition, since March 15th, the date that we acquired this data, we have established eligibility lists for Laboratory Technician 3, Associate Civil Engineer, Structural, and then Engineering Designer 1 and Wastewater. Now, if I can get the slide to advance. Oh, there we go. And then I also included for each union a slide about the reasons for the current vacancies. As you see before you, the reasons range from termination to demotion, and they are in the order according to the number of that category. If you take into account internal transfers, promotions, retirements, and new positions, and return to former class and demotions, that accounts for 74% of the vacancy rate. Now, if you take those factors out, the vacancy rate is 2.5% for terminations. The next bargaining unit I want to show you the vacancies for is Local 444. Currently, well, as of 3/15, the vacancy rate was 6.7%. This is a constant moving number because every day we are opening recruitments, we are closing recruitments, and we are hiring for positions. So as of 3/15, the vacancy rate for Local 444 was 6.7%, far below the 20% threshold for additional requirements. But I wanted to include the classifications where the vacancies are located as of 3/15. Currently, we are in the recruitment process for cross-connection specialists, electrical technicians, and heavy transport operator. Since March 15th, we have completed the recruitments for power plant mechanic operator, water distribution plumber 4, and machining and maintenance worker 2. In addition to that, the departments are holding or will be holding hiring interviews for wastewater plant operator trainee, maintenance specialist 2, pipeline welder, and instrument technician. What you see in front of you is the reasons for the vacancies for Local 444, excluding retirements, internal transfers, promotions, and demotions. The vacancy rate is actually slightly under 2%. And I just want to point out the retirements. We have 14 There's a lot of movement and there's a lot of opportunities for promotions, as you see in front of you. Okay. The next union I'm going to talk about is Local 39.
So Vince, could you,
Yes.
just back on 444 for a moment?
Yes.
I noticed that, the plumber one, or I guess that's the pipeline or the, and the utility labor positions, my understanding is that there are lists that have been created in the last recruitment. Are we having difficulty hiring from those lists that were created during the last recruitment for
No,
those
we don't
entry-level
have.
positions?
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. We don't have difficulties hiring from that list. In fact, we're going to open a new recruitment for water distribution plumber 1 probably around late May. Currently, I have asked staff to work with an outside consultant to work with the department to look at our testing of water distribution plumber 1 to ensure that all our test items and our testing requirements is according to our job description. Want to make sure that we identify and eliminate any barriers to employment. And so that is currently why there may be a few hires from the current list from the department, but ultimately the bulk of those hirings will be from the new list that we establish with the recruitment in May.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, there was only one vacancy in Local 39, and that was due to a retirement. We established the list for that position on February 25th, and so there will be a hire very soon for that vacancy. The last union I will talk about is Local 21. Currently, Local 21 is showing, well, I should say, as of 3/15/2025, Local 21 showed a vacancy of 3.9%, 10 positions, and I included the listing of those positions. Since this presentation was put together, we completed the recruitment for customer service supervisor. And so the hiring should start very soon for that position. And then there are several other positions that we have on our queue to get started within the next month and two. And what you see before you is the listing of the reasons for the vacancies. 3 promotions, 2 retirements, 2 internal transfers, 2 terminations, and then also 1 new position. I want to speak to you in the next couple slides about our recruitment, retention, and outreach efforts. First are job fairs and career events. Recruitment staff attends over 35 events in the past year and a half that entailed outreach and engagement, and we interacted with over 1,000 attendees for these events. I have personally attended the vast majority of these events, probably 32 out of the 35, because I feel that it is very important that people know that the manager of recruitment is out there and wants them to apply. I have a note here that we had a success story, so I briefly want to share this success story with you. Let me find my notes here. On October 8th, 2024, I was out at Eastmont Mall for an outreach event. BOSS, the Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency, invited me out to that event to talk I routinely talk at different community events, encouraging people to apply, and I go through the steps to apply and our recruitment process. Also with me at that event was Gistand Williams and a few members from his crew. Gistand is a construction and maintenance superintendent, and together we were at that event to talk about career opportunities at EBMUD. That event was well attended. If I remember correctly, there were close to 30 people at that event where we talked about, and just to get kind of familiarized you guys with BOSS. BOSS means Building Opportunity for Self-Sufficiency. They are a nonprofit, and I love their tagline. It says, "Your destiny is not determined by your zip code or the color of your skin." So on this event and on October 8th, we interacted with quite a few participants. And I'm happy to say one of those participants that we interacted with just got a job with EBMUD and started a few days ago. That is what makes everything worthwhile when you see the fruits of your efforts coming through. It's a very positive, very rewarding thing. So, next, I want to talk about information sessions. The Diversity and Inclusion Office and Recruitment Classification staff, we partner together and we go out to local community. We go with local community partners and we share information about working for EBMUD, including current and future job opportunities. And then in addition, we also have boot camps. The Diversity and Inclusion Office and my recruitment staff work in partnership to conduct events at Cypress Mandela and Richmond Build regarding our entry-level positions. The most recent one we did was for Water Distribution Plumber 1, where we go out and talk about the recruitment process, all the steps in the process, from the written testing to the performance test to the panel interview. And for those of you that are not familiar with these organizations, Cypress Mandela Training is a community-based organization based in East Oakland, dedicated to improving the lives of the people it serves by providing pre-apprentice construction and life skills training. Richmond Build is based in Richmond, California, and it's a public-private partnership focusing on developing talent and skill in high-growth, high-wage construction and renewable energy fields. Both events that we had for Water Distribution Plumber 1 at these agencies were well attended with close to 100 people per event.
Vince?
Yes.
Do you have plans to work with Rising Sun Center for Opportunity or Baywork in similar veins?
I do now. Yes. Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We're currently connected.
Okay.
Cool. And I use the word partnership because it is truly a partnership between Human Resources and Diversity Inclusion Office. I routinely talk to Derry and his staff on working together and making sure that we have coordinated efforts to outreach and to hire and to retain good people. There's a few more recruitment, retention, outreach efforts I wanted to talk about. Briefly talk about our career mobility initiative. It's a committee consisting of recruitment staff and employee and organizational development staff and departmental representatives to meet to discuss and implement strategies to promote promotional opportunities in the district. In addition, the Diversity and Inclusion Office runs our internship programs, and they have approximately 42 internships that they run throughout the year for classifications such as junior engineer, engineering aide, human resources intern, IT intern, student intern, ranger naturalist, and special employment and trainee. In addition to that, I should say, my staff and I work to make sure that we advertise in many and diverse websites and postings and things of that nature. You see here, it's over 150 different advertising sources and websites that we post our jobs on routinely, including websites that include for veterans, women in skilled crafts and trades, individuals with disabilities, and ethnically diverse populations. Lastly, one of the things that I'm really proud about of being a part of is our workforce social media campaign. We had this wonderful campaign launched from October to December of 2024 to elevate awareness of East Bay MUD as a diverse and desirable workplace. Maybe you saw the billboards on BART or other places or on Facebook. It's always nice when I open up Instagram or the gram, as kids say, and I see the East Bay MUD advertising. Very cool, very cool. So the campaign generated 5.6 million impressions, 35,000 clicks to the district career webpage, and over 1,500 applications to various positions. Very, very successful. When we opened up our operator trainee recruitment here a few months back, we received over 500 applications in 3 hours. So our outreach is making a difference. We are out there reaching people. And we're planning to do it again. So we are gearing up, and in the next couple of months, you're going to be seeing billboards, maybe even podcasts. I might even be on there, maybe. We'll see. But in any case, it's a partnership between the Public Affairs Office, the Diversity and Inclusion Office, and Human Resources, and it's going to be highly successful.
So I think it's a quality problem to have 500 applicants in 3 hours. I also think it's a problem. Because it means that if you were fortunate enough to be in the know about it, I mean, 3 hours is not a very long, I mean, if you were working at McDonald's or wherever you were working, and that position became open, you couldn't have applied for it because it would have been closed by the time you got off shift. So I have queasiness about, that's, the success is great, the outreach is great, but, we got to leave we have to leave the door open for a certain amount of time and I know we've been in this practice of closing jobs after we have the first 250 people apply or something like that, and that isn't, we should have closing dates.
Right.
And if it's gonna be open for 3 days, so be it. We gotta deal with what that means. But I don't feel comfortable just, shutting the door a few hours after a position's been opened. Just doesn't seem right.
What we do is we have the recruitment open for 2 weeks. And for the first week, we do not take applications. For the first week, people look at the announcement and we state that for this week, this is for outreach, and you'll be able to apply to send in your application 8 o'clock next Monday.
Yeah, but if you're on shift at 7 a.m. at McDonald's working the breakfast shift and you don't get off until 11 and, you had no expectation that the window would close before you got done with work that day. There's not a reasonable expectation to think that there was a week of outreach and then 3 hours of application time and then bye-bye.
This is a new phenomena for us.
Fine,
That
I
we
love,
are
I
working
love
with.
that it happened. I don't love that we turn people away from applying for positions that they thought and should reasonably expect would be available to apply to.
We will work on that. So lastly, this slide talks about retention. What you see is average years of service and average age by bargaining unit. For each of the bargaining units, for example, Local 21, the average age is 50. Local 2019, the average age is 45. Local 444, the average age is 45. And for Local 39, the average age is 42. And then you see the average years of service for each bargaining unit, 14.4, 9.84, and 8.09 and 7.88 respectively. A few takeaways from this slide is our tenure, average years of service is above the median tenure of 6 years of public sector employment as stated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the second takeaway from this is that we need to continue to modernize and adopt best practices to attract and retain employees, especially those who are just starting out in their career.
I could swear that when I first started, that the average years of service was in the 20s. Is that,
I believe
am I
it.
right about that?
Yes.
Okay, so we've had a real significant decline in years of service.
We're having quite a few
I know it's
retirements.
because of retirements, but I
Mhm.
mean, and when you hire people at retirement, they're, I'd like to understand, we need to be mindful of how it's trending now that we've crested the wave of retirements, which I think we have.
Yeah, I think we might have one more bubble coming through, but I mean, over half the organization has been here higher than the last decade.
Yeah, so maybe there's some way to bifurcate that to understand what whether people are staying or going.
And with that, are there any questions? Thank you.
Okay, I think first up on the agenda is 2019.
So we had, he's not
Justin,
coming.
yeah. What?
Local 444.
Oh, I do have 444 first, but I don't see Eric.
No. Right. And so I sent him a message to let him know.
Okay, well, why doesn't Justin do his and then,
Can you just put the presentation with 2019?
yeah, we have.
I could just have that one slide. No, the original that was just happening, the one that just happened that Vincent just talked about.
Oh, we want, then.
Yeah.
And then will we transition to yours?
Yeah, it's gonna be real
Okay,
quick.
because they're in two separate files, so we just wanna.
Yeah, I could start even now. Vacancies, we're here to talk about vacancies. Local 2019 applauds the district for complying with AB 2561. Chronic understaffing negatively affects employees due to increased workloads, overtime, stress, performing multiple jobs. This leads to burnout and high turnover, which further exacerbates the ongoing challenges of public services provision. Vacancies lead to contracting out of bargaining unit work, which creates additional problems such as profit motives by contractors that cut corners, decreased services, and the quality of services, and that this vacancy crisis is resulting in innovative planning and strategies to hire and secure these civil service positions. These were just some words I found when I Googled AB 2561. It's probably written by some AI bot, but this AI bot made sense to me. Good afternoon. Those who don't know me, I'm Justin Young. I'm the acting president of 2019. New President Young, board of directors, GM Chan, East EBMUD family, ratepayers, fellow ratepayers here and virtually. For the last 12 years, I've been active in the union due to concerns with vacancies for electrical engineers. My goal is not to have another job classification in Local 2019 to go through the chronic staffing shortage electrical engineers have been experiencing at East EBMUD. Bill 2561 will address the critical issue of high vacancy rates within local public agencies in California. The bill aims to ensure essential public services are adequately staffed while upholding the rights and interests of public employees. It's done by mandating collaboration between public agencies and unions to develop comprehensive plans to fill the vacancies. The bill promotes transparency, effective staffing, and positive labor relations. By implementing these measures, we can strengthen our public workforce and better serve our communities. I could flip it to the, can I flip it? Yeah, I could. Let's go right here. This is good. The presentation was heard from Cindy and Vincent. Thank you for presenting. It was a current snapshot. So we saw a snapshot of March 15, 2025. What Local 2019 and AB 2561 is asking the district to examine the trends of the vacancies. What do we need to ask? We need to determine what job classifications have recruitment and retention issues. We need to ask what positions have been posted continuously and for how long. Which job classifications are funded but left unfilled intentionally by the department? If so, why? And on this slide, you have all these positions. Why do we have 7 vacancies in customer service rep? Why are there 4 senior admin clerk openings? These are just some of the questions the bill is saying we need to ask. But most importantly, the teaming between local agencies and unions to solve the chronic staffing shortage issues. I have experience of explaining vacancies at the district for 10 years now. We have stood in front of the board of directors multiple times discussing concerns on vacancies and the contracts associated with those vacancies. Local 2019 members have been presenting their reasons for equity adjustments. Recruitment and retention, outdated job description, added job duties, performing duties of higher job class are just some of the reasons for an equity adjustment. Our members spend numerous hours of their personal time on these presentations and don't receive the proper attention they need. Our stance was always the same in 10 years for electrical engineers. Electrical engineers needed a 2-step increase to compete with outside agencies. We have raised our concerns and we're told to handle equity adjustments during negotiations. This is the first time I participated in the contract negotiation team, and chronic staffing shortages have no place in negotiations. Today, I want to show a portion of an equity adjustment that explains a recruitment and retention crisis. We believe we have the reference for HR to determine job classification with vacancy issues that should be presented during the yearly AB 2561 public hearings. And I could pull up the other if you could pull up the other presentation. So this presentation is the third negotiation electrical engineers, control system engineers have presented their case for equity adjustments. And I just want to show you, I really want to focus in on the recruitment and retention aspect and the contracting out portion of it. Yep, no problem. Oh, it's on top, I see it. I see it.
Hold on 1 minute.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, Justin, because we need to share it on.
So this is the third presentation the electrical engineers, control system engineers have presented during negotiations. This is from February 5th. So this was presented on February 5th a couple of months ago. I'm just gonna scroll through this. I don't wanna freak out Risha because it's 38 slides and I told her I'd only talk about 4 of them.
Just to give you a time check, you're at about 6 minutes.
6 minutes, that's cool. Yeah, it works. I just want to talk about this slide right here. So just put some context to what we're AB 2561 is trying to do. So here's a work group in local 2019. There's 24 associate electrical engineer positions. In those 24 positions, 6 of those positions are vacant. 6 divided by 24 is 25%. 25% of the positions here at East EBMUD are vacant on February 5th. As you can see, the 4 in the red right there, there's still open positions. The 2 on the right, we do something here at the district to fill these. There's a GM proceed to notice action where you actually take a position, you actually flex that position to another position to help fill it, or if there's another need. In this case, there's 3 positions needed to flex them down from associate to a junior or an assistant, in this case, assistant. That's why you see these positions right here. Luckily for us, these 2 positions that were associate electrical engineers have been filled as an assistant. So as you can see, these are some of the tactics the district has to use to fill vacancies. You have to downgrade the job to a different class. I mentioned that. These, I'll fly by these, but these positions, the door is President Young, these doors are wide open. Some of these positions have been open for over a year. This one's creeping up to a year. So we're just looking for people to fill these positions. So we do not have that issue with the door closing on associate electrical engineers. Retention issues. We have, this is data from since the last negotiation. Since last negotiation, we have lost 9 positions. If we're not counting the retired folks, we lost 6 electrical engineers here at the East EBMUD since last negotiation. It's really hard to fill these positions when people are constantly coming and going. It's a revolving door. These are a combination of assistant electrical engineers, associate electrical engineers. And what's common with these 6 positions as these positions have, all 6 of those positions have less than 5 years here at the district. So I think we know what the trend is for our electrical engineer if we're not doing what we've been asking for the last 10 years. I also want to cover what comes with, okay, so we have a bunch of openings, so what? So you have to do the work, right? Okay, so it's contract out the work. That's one of the main reasons why I became really active in the union. I was witnessing firsthand the poor use of public funds. We understand when there's positions open and the work has to get done, you have to contract out. So I started becoming the chair of the contract out committee. I was not aware of how much money the district was spending on our core work. $3.3 million from 2018 to 2020 to do all those contracts here, approved by the board, each one of these. Core work for electrical engineers, but things got worse. 2021 to present, $4.8 million the board approved to complete all those core work for electrical engineers. It's frustrating when you're in these meetings and they're telling, oh, this isn't core electrical work. And you're sitting there as subject matter expert saying, what are you talking about? This is what we do. But the issue wasn't really the cost. It was the other cost. The cost was the contracts were not up to district standards. They were overpriced, overpromised, and underdelivered. The money was not budgeted to correct errors. The time it took engineers like myself and my fellow colleagues that were doing priority work to help these projects, the loss of knowledge that's transferring to outsiders, totally lost. That was sort of the problems that we encountered. But this was the purpose of the bill. to mandate local agency leaders and representative employees, aka unions, to work together to identify and implement solutions to chronic staffing shortages. Bill 2561 and Local 2019's goal is to determine those job classifications in our local agency. So I want to close by we just need answer to these questions. And this is what the bill is about, for us to have these conversations, for the agency and for the unions to work these things out. One, we need to determine what job classifications have issues recruiting and retaining. Two, what positions have been posted open continuously and for how long? Three, which job classifications are funded but left unfilled intentionally by the department? If so, why? Four, the California Constitution, this is straight from the bill, the California Constitution requires the state to reimburse local agencies and school districts for certain costs mandated by the state. Has the district looked into this reimbursement? How would we qualify for these funds for vacancies? Local 2019 looks forward to working together and identifying and implementing solutions to chronic staffing shortages. Thanks for the floor.
Thank you. Since these are presentations, are there questions? Are questions appropriate? Any board members have questions for Justin? Nope, okay. Is Eric with us?
I sent Mr. Larson a message. I believe that they're in coalition bargaining.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he won't be making a presentation. Okay.
No.
Okay, with that then, we will now take public comment from anyone else that wishes to address the AB 2561 vacancy report.
I have no speaker cards and I have no public comment online.
Okay, are there any comments from the board? Hearing none. Okay, then we need a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
I'll move. I'll second.
Moved by Director Chan, seconded by Director Gomez to close the public hearing. And there's nothing else that we need to do. We don't need to accept the report or, okay. Usually there's an action that's associated with the public hearing. In this case, there is not an action.
I
that's
was
associated with the public
advised that
hearing.
the board does not have to take an action to accept the report, and so we just are going to motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, so we will now move on to
We
the
just
general
need to vote
managers.
on closing. We had the motion in the second, if we can just.
Oh,
say
we need to
in
vote,
favor,
right.
yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, passes unanimously.
Madam President, would like to just say, it was good to receive this information. We are, now is not a time that we have to consider solutions and what the district is doing to address what the information we've received. We have a legislative human resources committee, and I look forward to hearing about what we're doing to solve these issues over the coming months.
It's the perfect mesh for the mission of the Ledge HR committee, which doesn't happen very often, so.
I would like to propose that we bring an item to address the concerns raised today to a Ledge HR meeting in the next.
Yeah, we already have scheduled an item to talk about the recruitment process.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, then we are on to item 14.
14, yeah, for the, we'll start with the water supply update. This is the last update for the year. We will be back on April 22nd with the water supply availability and deficiency report. I think this is mostly good news, but it's up to the board how much you want to hear. Do you want to go through the whole report or just get to the punchline?
Punchline.
Let's see.
That's the last slide.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually is. As soon as I get it up.
Before questions, actually, I guess it's the last slide before questions.
While that's getting set up, I think we all have heard, we started off fairly dry in January timeframe. We thought we were heading for a dry winter, but things turned around. And fortunately, we have done much better, both at EBMUD and at the state level. Yep.
It rained yesterday.
Hmm?
It rained yesterday.
Oh, you call that rain? Tiny bit.
Yes.
Tiny bit. I think it's,
So just a
Slide 12.
factoid here as we wait for this. For the first time in 25 years, California experienced 3 consecutive years of near or above average snowpack, according to the measurements from the California Department of Water Resources. Again, first 3 consecutive years in 25 years. So that's a good sign.
wow. That means next year's almost certain to be the first year of a drought.
Oh. I didn't hear that. Yeah, so let me, next slide, right there, okay. So with all being said and done, this is what we're looking at for the end of September, which is a critical period for us. And a wet and median scenario, which is closely where we are expected to refill our system at 630,000 acre feet of water in all our reservoirs. A dry scenario has us at about 605,000 acre feet, and that, although that is not a full system, we're very good, in good shape going into the summer and into next year. So that being said, any questions? Oh.
I have a quick question. So looking back at July of '24, when our number was above 700, was that like wildly above normal at that point?
No, it was a wet winter, but at that point, there's a lot of melt coming down, and so the reservoirs are full. And then, as you can see, throughout the winter, we evacuate to make room for another winter. It was a good year last year. And so, yeah, we started off the year slightly better position, but not that much better. And it's not abnormal, I guess, not very high for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roberto.
Good news.
Yes, good news. So also in your packet is the Speakers Bureau report for the events through December 2025. These include community gatherings, sponsored events, tours, field trips, staff coordination meetings, and other events. This year, we also have budget and rates presentations through the beginning of June. The board had asked that we calendar a discussion on the Speakers Bureau quarterly to provide an opportunity for the board to provide feedback and suggestions for other events. So if there are suggestions or other events you'd like to include, please let me know.
General Manager, just to clarify, the Speakers Bureau list was in your board
board
materials. There was
packet.
nothing at your places this time.
Yes.
And then the next item, President Young, if you'd like, it's not urgent.
Push it to the next meeting?
Yeah, if we could push that to the next meeting on the wildfire discussion. And then finally, I have the monthly report is attached to your packet. I just want to provide an update on the golden mussels. We have a team of staff working with state and federal agencies, research institutions, and other water managers to track the spread of the mussel, review inspection and decontamination protocols, and prepare long-term plans. At this time, our staff is not comfortable with the current protocols. that they'll be able to protect our reservoirs, and we plan to extend the boat closures through the end of the year. But I'll note that recreation remains open for shoreline fishing, boat rentals, camping, and day use. And that's the end of my reports.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public on these items? No. Okay. Other items for future consideration, please submit those items to the general manager or myself. We're now on to director comments, which are optional. Not optional, but you need to submit your comments to the secretary, but if you'd like to make verbal comments, that is welcome as well.
So I do,
Why don't we just start?
Do you wanna start
Ms.
with-
Joey, she could
Yeah,
pass
there you
her.
Okay, sure, thanks. Unfortunately, I had some challenges with my laptop. I gotta come back tomorrow to get that fixed. So, in a nutshell, 3 events. Monthly Women in Civic Leadership in Contra Costa on March 26th. On March 27th, attended the Contra Costa County's annual special districts, and that was really awesome. And on March 28th, attended the Madam C.J. Walker annual event that's hosted by 100 Black women.
Great.
thank you. So I have attended a number of things, but today I would like to take this opportunity to actually make a different kind of statement and to acknowledge that these are not normal times. And as an immigrant and a Latina, I have been deeply impacted emotionally by the policies of the current federal administration. I can imagine that many of you have been similarly impacted. And perhaps you know a friend or a relative that has been living in fear since January 20th or worse, someone who has been impacted by the mass deportations. Know that I understand, that I see you, and that I will speak up against these injustices. These are not normal times. As a community leader, I feel it is my responsibility to rise and state that I vehemently disagree with what is happening in our country. From immigration policy to health policy, from environmental policy to water policy, I'm appalled by what's going on. I stand in solidarity with federal employees who have been wrongfully terminated. I stand in solidarity with immigrants that have been wrongfully detained and deported. I stand in solidarity with the brave men and women who are still trying to keep our federal government agencies operational under this dire situation. These are not normal times. Today, I call on all of us to do what we can where we are. Together, we are strong. Together, we will weather this storm. Know that I'm with you, that I will do all I can to right these wrongs, that I encourage you to do what you need to do to take care of yourselves, because indeed, these are not normal times. Thank you.
I get to go after that. Proud to sit next to you and serve with you, Director Gomez. Thank you. Real quick, 27th, I was at the East Bay Innovation Awards. I think we were one of the sponsors, so I got one of those little tape measures that now I have 2 because you gave them away at my briefing. And on the 2nd, I was able to attend with the general manager, the Community of Harbor Bay Volunteer Appreciation Dinner, and the general manager gave a really good presentation that I think was well received. And I think our takeaway is to work with the HOAs across the ward and even across the district on, grass replacement. I think that's, and then, just kind of another shout out. I'm moving, I had to call customer service, and it was a really great experience. So our customer service people are great. I don't think they knew who I was, which I appreciated. Anonymity is good sometimes.
You have a different last name.
I know. That's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I got to kick off the Community Water Academy last week. Great group of folks. Catherine and her team do an amazing job. And I think they're going to have their hands full with this crowd. They have lots of questions and thoughts, and I think we'll, be well represented. I just wish we could do it more. 'cause once a year seems like kind of not enough. And then I also, this past weekend, in keeping with Director Gomez's comments, attended the hands-off demonstration in Oakland and actually helped organize hands-off demonstrations in the Central Valley in the congressional district of David Valadao. And tonight, I will be attending a sponsored event being held at UC Berkeley by Holy H2O, exploring the history of the creek protection movement in the East Bay. And other things upcoming, but I'll report those at the next board meeting. Director Chan?
I just wanted to talk about, just because it's a great memory, it did happen 2 weeks ago, it didn't happen last week, but I had dinner with, at a big event in Dublin, and I sat at the East Bay Mud table. So I thought what was really fun about that was, I didn't realize how fast people from East Bay Mud get up and dance. And so when the DJ said, everyone on the floor, the first table that was on the floor was East Bay Mud. So anyway, I do a lot of things, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, that East Bay Mud employees are partiers and fun. Yeah. Thank you.
Director Lewis?
On Friday, March 28th, I also attended the Madam C.J. Walker Awards, and it was a phenomenal opportunity, although I know that Director Smith has had the opportunity previously. It was the first time for me, however, to meet some of the wonderful, incredible, talented folks that serve us who are African-American women here at East Bay Mud. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank staff for their assistance and excellent presentations at my ward event in Ward 4. I think our attendees had a lot of great information exchanged, and that was very much appreciated. I gave I also would like to, third the proud to serve with you remarks as to Director Gomez, and your statement just now was poetry, and I gave a similar remark as an honored speaker to a UC Berkeley student audience just over the weekend, and did not have the energy to come up with more words for just now, but this is what I'm thinking every day, and it's great to hear your voice on this. So those are my comments for today.
Okay. We are now at adjournment, and one of the other things that happened between the last board meeting and this one is that a very dear friend of mine and a friend of East Bay Mud passed. David Nesmith. So the thing I'll start with saying is that, the people that have made a real difference at East Bay Mud, most of them have their names on that wall or another wall or a dam or a pipeline or some piece of infrastructure somewhere, but it is rare indeed. I didn't think I was going to get choked up. Okay. Rare indeed that someone who is a member of our community has such an enduring impact on the board. David Nesmith, otherwise known as Chicken, due to his service in the Peace Corps as a conscientious objector in Vietnam, teaching folks how to use livestock, specifically chickens. That's how he got his name that has stuck with him. There are many stories about that. One of them being that there were 13 Davids in the group, and so they needed nicknames, and that became one. I could talk. I met him first in 1982 when both of us were coordinating GOTV in Contra Costa County to stop the peripheral canal, which we did single-handedly from Contra Costa County, not really. But that was my introduction to him and the power of humor and energy to excite people and make change. He served as political director for the Sierra Club's San Francisco Bay chapter. He worked with Save the Bay. He volunteered with many organizations to take people on rivers. He started out as his dad took him through the South, and he was born in 1944, so he had the opportunity to be a real part of the civil rights movement. And he is, what has that to do with East Bay Mud? Well, if it were not for chicken, I do not believe that the Sacramento River Forum would have made the decision to get off that East Bay Mud would have actually been able to make the decision to get off the American River. Were it not for David Nesmith, we probably might be aboard overseeing the raising of Pardee Dam instead of looking for and leading in ways to look at our water supply in a myriad of ways. And if it were not for David Nesmith, he propelled, we might all decide to share credit for the wild and scenic proposal that protects the Mokelumne River, but David lived it. He took all of us down the river and many decision makers. He got the middle bar takeout on the Electra run. So I don't think there's actually anybody that hasn't gotten a paycheck from East Bay Mud in some way or another who has made more difference on the organization. And he suffered a stroke in 2012 that made him spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. For the first 2 years, it didn't keep him off the river. But finally, just 2 weeks ago, he crossed over and he's leading a river trip somewhere. So I would like to adjourn this meeting in his honor. And I have some other thoughts about things that we might do to honor his legacy. So with that, we will end the meeting.